Good evening to one and all. Good evening. I'm going to say a prayer. Let's bow our heads.
Let's bow our heads. Almighty and everlasting God, we first thank the Lord for life. We thank you, dear God, for this beautiful, wonderful party. We thank you for these lovely people, Lord, that come today, this evening, in your name, to do the business of not only the Democratic Labour Party, but the business of the people of Barbados. We ask, dear God, that you fill this house with your Holy Spirit, and everything that is said and done here is done in your name, in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Ricky. Okay. You can have a seat, please. Okay. Good evening, comrades. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our President, Dr. Ronnie Yearwood. The General Secretary, Mr. Steve Blackie. Our newly minted opposition leader and party leader, the Honorable Ralph Thorne Casey. He's not here, but he's not here. Members of the Executive, General Council, branches, specially invited guests, residents, and all those joining us online. Once again, welcome from the Chairman and the Executive of the St. James North Constituency Branch. This is a very auspicious occasion, as it is the first roadshow of the People's House. And we'd like to thank our President, Dr. Yearwood, and members of the Executive for selecting the St. James North constituency as the first constituency to host this event, and the implementation of the People's House. Excellent idea, Dr. Ronnie. Thank you very much.
Much, Winston, and thank you so much to St. James North for having us. It is the first time that the People's House is on the road, and we are so happy to be here and to be welcomed by St. James North. I am Stacia Brown. I am your host for this evening, and let me tell you, all of you are beautiful people, and we are glad to be here at St. Albans School. We thank all the members of the executive who would have planned and ensured that we are ready for this evening. Now, we have a very special evening planned. We have members of the Shadow Cabinet who are here on hand to listen, to hear, to understand, and to give feedback to you about what they have been seeing and hearing regarding their respective areas. We thank our President, Dr. Ronnie Yearwood, for leading us this evening. And we have also on hand Ms. Felicia Dujon, our third Vice President and the Shadow Minister for Education. Ms. Tyra Trotman, who is here, and everybody knows Tyra by now. She is on social media, advocating on sports, advocating for youth, and on culture. So thanks for joining us, Tyra. Mr. Ricky Harrison, who hails from St. Michael North and is the Shadow Minister for Housing. He joins us this evening as well. And Miss Karina Goodridge. Now let me tell you a story about Karina. Karina, I don't know if anybody saw today's Sunday Sun, right? Yes. But Karina is representing today in the Sunday Sun. If you have not seen it, go through your Sunday Sun, whether online or a hard copy, and watch and listen to what Karina had to say. She's a voice not to be misunderstood or undervalued in any way. So let's give a hand to Karina. And we have some others that will be joining us as we go on this evening. So we will look out for those. Thanks for all of those joining us on YouTube and Facebook, because we are being carried live on the DLP Facebook and YouTube pages. And we are glad to get started. So we see, I know when Miss Dujon is very thoughtful looking, she has a lot to say, right? And she represents on education. And we know our schools are not where we want it to be. Whether it be the students of our schools, our children, or whether it be the school plants across this nation, whether it be primary, secondary, or nursery, they are all major concerns for us. So we will first give Ms. Dujon an opportunity to speak on education.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, comrades. Good evening, our viewers online. And I must admit that I see very beautiful faces today. We're ready to do what is required of us and to do what God expects us to do in our best ability. Brothers and sisters, today we are actually in a school setting. When we look around, we see numbers, letters, and things that children should learn in an environment which is supposed to be safe and an environment that is conducive for learning to develop them not only as good citizens, but to develop their character as individuals. But brothers and sisters, what we have been seeing in the past few months, in the past few weeks, and perhaps in the past few years when it comes to education is very alarming. Brothers and sisters, our school system is in a crisis, and I want us to be very clear about that. And I'm quite sure that some of you may have seen and witnessed the viral videos of our students being blooded, our students being carried to the hospital. And brothers and sisters, what I can tell you is that they've had numerous research on violence in school. Violence in school does not only affect students. Violence in school affects teachers. It affects our community. It affects our society. And it affects Barbados on a wider scale. Those increases in violence that we have seen, and again, we are urging that the Ministry of Education, and for some reason I'd like to applaud them, for taking once a stand and meeting with the union, and of course at some point, and I always want to make that very clear, we cannot design policies or legislations or any kinds of intervention if we do not include the persons which those interventions will affect, and that means our students. Brothers and sisters, I am speaking to you this evening with a very heavy heart because I'm also a teacher. And I understand what it feels like to be in an environment where children do not feel safe, where children and parents are concerned whether the child will return at home safely without being called to say that the child is at the hospital. Or even worse, that the child has passed. And this is something we have experienced in our society. Our young persons need guidance. They need the intervention that is needed. Brothers and sisters, I was sitting here with Stacy, and as she said, when I'm in deep thought, it's because sometimes I'm moved by the Spirit. And sometimes it is important that we say what is right, what is ethical, and not consider the political rhetoric that is happening right now. Too often we've seen this government indicating that they have a plan. Just last week we heard them, they have a plan. But yet still we are not seeing the type of intervention that is necessary for our students, that is necessary for our teachers, and most importantly, to allow parents to feel comfortable to send their children in an environment where they know that their child is safe. Brothers and sisters, learning and going to school is not only about the academics. Academics can be taught anywhere. But what is very important that we place children in a place that is holistic, that helps them and enables them to be compassionate human beings, and also to help them develop the character that they need to grow and flourish in our Barbadian society. Brothers and sisters, this is very important. A study which was done by UNICEF in 2021 states that over 40% of students between 13 and 15-year-olds were seriously injured in Barbados. In Barbados, nowhere else. The study also shows that 50% of teachers have witnessed violence among students. And that violence does not only include physical violence, but that also include students using weapons at schools. Brothers and sisters, we need intervention for our young persons. And what I can say about the Democratic Labour Party, we do not just speak for speaking's sake. We ensure the intervention that is required for our students, that is required for the teachers, are done the way that it should be done, by using the research that has been done. There is research to show us that our young males are more receptible to violence within schools. It also shows that students, and I will take it very closely for you so that when we have an opportunity we can go for it as well, where students are claiming their fears of going to school. So it's not only that they have to deal with the academics, but their mental health is very important. How are we expected to have our students learn and grow and do well in the maths and the sciences and all the other areas if they cannot function emotionally? If every time they have to think, what is going to happen to me if I leave the classroom? And most importantly, the teachers. How do teachers feel in that environment? Brothers and sisters, in the past few weeks, we've been seeing teachers calling out to the Ministry of Education that they need additional staff. They need adequate security at the school, not only physical security, but to ensure that the school is secured in a way. And what has been done? What has the ministry have done for those teachers? So my appeal, not only for us here, but to all parents, you must hold this government to task. This is your children. And if they cannot be protected at the schools, where they need to be protected when they leave your homes, then that tells us something. And I believe our president made a very salient point today. And he asked the question to Barbadians, are you willing to live another 5 years under this administration? And what that also means, are you willing to allow your children to go into environments? We're not only speaking in terms of the violence in schools, but also the environmental problems that exist in those schools. And if we look at the statistic, we will see that with the new budget, those schools have been receiving over $200,000 every year for maintenance. So if you're spending all that money every year on those schools, then why do we have those environmental problems at the schools? This is a government that does not care about our children. We need to wake up. We need to recognize what is happening. Violence in school doesn't just emerge. There are existing problems within those schools. Our children cannot settle. Our children have existing problems. Why? Because we have a government which is not settled. We have a government that keeps changing its cabinet and changing its ministers of education every other 2 years or so. How many ministers of education do we need again? So that they can understand And when it comes to children, we have to be very passionate because they're one of the most vulnerable persons within our society. And we want to continue to support parents. And I know sometimes parents, you get it very hard because when children do things, we always blame parents. But parents, the average Barbadian parent work very hard to send their children to school, to ensure that they learn and don't interfere with anybody. Go to school and learn and do well. So we're not going to cast blame on parents. We are there to support parents and to ensure that our children, we're not going to cast aside our children because some of them need the intervention. Some of them need the intervention. They also need the attention. Some of them may be going through various types of educational challenges that perhaps may provide some kinds of disruptions in class. So brothers and sisters, when it comes to education, I am urging you to recognize that this is a government that wants to create or change the entire education system with all their reforms, but not thinking about the most important assets at the schools, the children, the students, that they must be safe in the environment that we are charged. We are paying them every month with our taxpayers, but you cannot keep our children safe at schools. You cannot keep them safe in a way that it is conducive to their learning. And the statistics is there, and we have not seen one plan. I would urge the Minister of Education to tell us what is the plans that you have for education when it comes to violence in schools. How are we going to reduce it? Violence in school does not only have to do with bullying in schools. It has to do with mental health issues. It has to do in terms of classroom management. If you have a shortage of teachers at schools, what do you expect? I think my time is up.
There'll be more. There'll be more.
Why Felicia is the Shadow Minister for Education. You cannot take away from somebody who's as passionate as Felicia, not just about the academics of our children, but our children are one of the most vulnerable groups in our society. And they should be protected. If there's one environment, they should be protected in not just their homes, but in schools. Both those in secondary schools and the primary schools. They should be raised in a way where they are being taught about the ethics of situations, how they can complement a situation or cause chaos. But they should be learning about the type of people that can complement the growth of Barbados, what their parents have contributed to, what their grandparents have contributed to. Because I'm sure everyone in this room can say that their parents and their grandparents contributed to where we are now in Barbados. And we want our children to be able to do the same thing. So Felicia, thank you. And since we were on children, we will now move on to Ms. Tyra Trotman, who is the voice and the shadow minister for youth, sports, and culture. And she comes with her own degree of passion as well.
Pleasant good evening to everyone. So recently, many of you may or may not be aware, I went up by the National Stadium and I was advocating on behalf of the youth in terms of sports and sporting activities. And I begged and I asked the question as to why it is that even though there was a grant offered in the sum of $40 million to refurbish the facilities, why is it that the facilities are still in such a derelict state? There was no answer from Mr. Charles Griffith until he went into Parliament. And instead of directly answering the question, he danced around, as is the trend with his current administration. He danced around the question. He tried to insult me by calling me Red Riding Hood. But if anybody knows the story of Red Riding Hood, you will know that if I am Red Riding Hood, he will have to be the big bad wolf. then unlike Miss Red Riding Hood, I got a little more sense. So the big bad wolf can't trick me. And I certainly will not let him trick you, Barbadians, you, the citizens of Barbados. I will not allow it to happen, not under my watch. Now, he got into Parliament and he said, the only two things that the DLP ever did for sports was the David Thompson football competition and the Silver Hill road tennis competition. Now, I said this is a catastrophe. I cannot allow this to happen. How do you want to eradicate the history of the Democratic Labour Party? How do you want to brainwash the citizens of Barbados and trick them into believing that for 10 years, the Democratic Labour Party did nothing for the youth, did nothing for sports, and did nothing for culture? I said I cannot have it be. So what I did, I met with Mr. Stephen Lashley. Mr. Stephen Lashley, he gave me a document. I have it here today. 135 pages of programs, 135 pages of projects, 135 pages of achievements that the Democratic Labour Party was able to do from the year of 2013 to 2018. That's 5 years, so that's half the time he's talking about. So then how you want to get up in Parliament and tell bold-faced lies about how the Democratic Labour Party never did nothing? Furthermore, I was informed, and I verily believe the same to be true, that he was a commissioner of youth during that period of time. So if you want to talk about how the DLP ain't do nothing, then you are speaking to your own. You understand? So let's not go down that path. I want to inform you. Because during Parliament, he keeps saying, I have a story to tell. I have a story to tell. Will he tell a story? Because what he was talking about was pure fiction and not facts. But I'm here with the facts today, and I want to present them to you. So just bear with me. It's going to take some time, but we have to do it. So these are some of the things that the Democratic Labour Party was able to achieve. We established the first and only Youth Empowerment Center at Silver Hill, Christchurch, with funding from the Maria Holdup Memorial Trust. On top of that, we had the Cultural Industries Development Act. We had the establishment of Endless Possibilities, which was a highly successful job placement program for the youth. We had the successful implementation of 227 community projects within the Youth Development Program between the period of 2011 and 2016. We established 108 youth-led businesses that generated 119 new full-time jobs under an expanded youth entrepreneurial scheme, with 24 businesses accounting or contributing to the generation of $16 million in income. We had the training of youth under the Barbados Youth Service, which has now been rebranded the Youth Advancement Corps. Now, this is another thing the BLP love to do. They take our ideas, our projects, our things, rebrand them, and then try to kick us out the door so we never do nothing. And on top of that, they hijack our programs, our ideas, and they do a bad job at it. So they might as well give it back to us. Now, we also had the Sikh Unity program, which really and truly is the peace program, but it's just we doing a better job at it, and I'll explain why. Under the Sikh Unity program, which was mostly targeted in New Orleans and Chapman Lane, they took what we would call block boys or block men. And not only did they give them businesses, but they also gave them the knowledge, the training, and the tools to make those businesses successful, which is different to what is happening now. As I understand it, now, if you're a part of the Peace Corps program, you go, you register your business, and you qualify for a grant. But then what happens thereafter? There's no follow-up. Nobody don't check in and say, well, how is the business going? Is it successful? How much income are you generating? They do not give these young men the tools, because to start a business and to run a successful business is two different things. So you are basically flushing money down the toilet because you are not properly implementing this program. And we did it with Sit Unity. On top of that, we also had the block droughts program, the droughts with Suki King, remember that? He went to the different blocks, and instead of the men fighting it out and warring, they fought it out sitting face to face on a board. So it helped to reduce crime and fight crime. And on top of that, there was a first responders program under the DLP. We went on the blocks and we trained because we understood that these men usually, they line for the majority of the day on the blocks. They don't go to work or anything to start. So when something happens in the community, they're usually the first ones there to witness it. So they said instead of just allowing them there to wither away and waste away their time, we're going to take them and train them in firefighting, CPR, those type of things, first responders. So if anything happens in the community, if there's a fire, if there's an elderly person that needs some assistance, they will be there, ready, willing, and trained to respond until the professionals get there. Anybody know what's going on with that? The other thing we did, we established a national sports policy. We also laid the new athletic track at the National Stadium, which costed us $3.8 million. So when you say we didn't do anything, that is a lie. We refurbished the Garfield Sobers Gymnasium with grant funding from the same Chinese in the amount of $19 million, but the difference is we actually did what we said we was gonna do with the money. Because it was refurbished, but up to now, the gymnasium is underutilized. Things like boxing, those are types of sports that can be held there, netball, basketball, these type of things. On top of that, we did a inter-parish, thank you, an inter-parish, it was table tennis, not table tennis, road tennis sporting championship. We also created the World Road Tennis Federation. We had the IBA Championship, which invited or attracted 95 countries into Barbados. On top of that, we had the Youth Development Program. We established the National Youth Parliament. Those are things that we did. Lashley and his team flew down to Paris and got Bridgetown and the Garrison Savannah listed on the National Cultural List, the Heritage List. So these are things that we did. So do not let the BLP come and trick you all, trick Barbadians into believing that we've done nothing in the 10 years that we were in government, that we did nothing for youth culture and sports. It is not true. It is a lie. On top of that, there was an issue not too long ago about persons being laid off or fired from their jobs because they fly out to represent Barbados in sports competitions and sporting events. And Charles Griffith said, don't worry, legislation is coming. Legislation is coming to deal with that. But Mr. Griffith, if you check section 330 of the Employment Rights Act, the legislation is already there. So this just shows you how incompetent Mr. Griffith is. And I said it, and I make no apologies for it. He is incompetent, and he needs to be replaced. And it's up to you all to replace him. And I am tired, and I am sick. I mean, everybody always want to remember the bad. But if you want to call upon the bad and remember the bad, try and remember the good too here. You cannot talk about A and don't talk about B. I will not have it, and I will continue to advocate. There's so many more, as I said, 135 pages long. I can't go through it all this evening. But I intend to, over the course of the next weeks, to remind the public and remind Barbadians of the good things that the Democratic Labour Party has done for this country. So, Mr. Griffith, oh, what big eyes you have. But you will not trick me. So if I can be Little Red Riding Hood, there's Little Red Riding Hood 2.0, but it can't be red, it will gotta be blue and yellow because I with the DLP, not the beast.
side of the youth and on the side of the Democratic Labour Party. You can't stop her voice. You can call her names, Mr. Griffith. But remember in the story who you are.
Okay.
Right? So now Tyra has set the stage for youth, sports, and culture. We know that housing has remained an outstanding issue for the current administration. They have had, I was told by our well-informed shadow minister for housing, Mr. Ricky Harrison, they've had 4 ministers in almost 6 years. And I don't know if they've built one house, right? They may have built one, but certainly not any of the developments they have touted. Furtherless, all of the institutions they have created to talk about housing or to implement housing for Barbadians, because housing is one of the most sought after issues among Barbadians, right? So now we give the mic to Mr. Ricky Harrison to give us his information about housing in Barbados.
Good evening, comrades, and thank you, Sister Stacy. Comrades, before I go into my discourse, I found it strange that an issue as important as housing in Barbados didn't come up during the estimates. Somebody hiding somebody. And I think Sister Tyra spoke about incompetent ministers. But if you open the dictionary and saw a picture next to the word incompetent, you would perhaps see 4 ministers of housing gathered together on the one bench. Comrades, housing in Barbados is a very important aspect of any young person's life. Most people, when they start to work, they desire a house. You know, a house makes them feel, a car too, but a house makes them feel proud. We've had, over the last 5 or 6 years, a multiplicity of promises from the housing ministers that we've had so far. Indeed, on the 17th of February 2022, Minister Sutherland got up and boldly pronounced that he will give us 10,000 houses in 5 years. We are into 6 years now. Then, on April the 23rd, 2023, he again promised 10,000 houses. March the 17th, 2023, as it were 2024, he promised again these 10,000 houses. As if Barbadians are stupid. You know, you keep promising these houses, and yet still you've not even seen one. Nobody has been able to say this housing, like we had Country Park Towers, we had the Grotto, we had Valerie, all over under the last DLP administration. Thus far, we've not had one single housing unit being opened by this current administration. And all that the Barbados Labour Party will tell you, they're promising houses. They know the last speech, they're promising land over at Ginger Works and somewhere else in St. Joseph. I mean, we are tired of these promises. People want to be able to get it, go into a house, turn a key, turn on the stove, enjoy living. What they are good at, I can tell you, is destroying and mashing up part of the Bajan term. For example, anybody who lives in St. John and passed through what might have been the Pool Estate would have seen an overabundance of rust and rotten wood and twisted metal. And then the chairman, I can't pronounce his surname, so I wouldn't try, can come to the people of Barbados and tell you that we didn't get the title deeds, so we couldn't build the houses. Any third-year student doing A-level law knows that before that you can commit to building a property, you must have the title deeds drawn and prepared and in the correct format. How, in the name of anything that is good, can you come to the people of Barbados, start 104 houses and ain't got no title deeds? But it gets worse. A visit to 6 Rose Development in St. Philip. Again, twisted, rusted metal, and 6 Chinese workers on the ground. Nothing is happening. Spoke to one of the Chinese workers. He said he was there for 6 months. I asked him how long it would take to construct one of the houses. He said 1 month. Thus far, none of the houses have been constructed. And you have an estimate debate going on, and where is Minister Sutherland, or Minister Duguid, or Minister Charles Griffith, or Minister George Payne? But he don't got nothing doing that anymore. But certainly, Barbados need more. I mean, 6 years have passed. We can't go back harping to what happened in 2018. Give persons houses. People need the houses to make themselves comfortable. It gets worse. Somebody on their side complained that their land tax moved from what it was, $300 to $8,000. Can you believe that there are countries, certainly in the Commonwealth, Dominica, Turks and Caicos, Cayman Islands, and we go as far as Morocco, that no land tax is paid. Yet still, this heartless, careless government continues to burden its people with onerous taxes. Somebody mentioned that there's a salt tax and a sugar tax. So where are we going? What are persons in Barbados left to do? How are we going to survive? What is Minister Sutherland going to tell? Well, the last thing he said is that he's going to build 9, I'll come into that, don't ask about the hope yet. He's going to build 900 houses. Now, he didn't say it to his credit where he's going to build them. And just a quick look at the Hope Project. The Hope Project has had 4 successive chairmen, all seemingly resigning in disgrace. They promised 154 houses at Lancaster, none so far. They promised over at Deanstown, none so far. As a matter of fact, persons who purchased land in Deanstown are now selling these lots because, whatever reasons, they're selling the property. But why name a project Hope and there's no hope for persons who invested in these projects? No, we laugh, but it's a serious thing when people take up their hard-earned money, pay a down payment for the mortgage, a 10% deposit, and then they can't get a home. They can't enjoy themselves. Minister Sutherland, please, I know you like to hide, and they're hiding you, but come and tell the persons that the $96 million that you just got in the estimate, how will it be used? I also want to find out, you said that when you came to power, and I like to use the word power as it relates to them, that when you came to power, the national debt of the National Housing Corporation was $200 million. I don't know how much it is now. I don't know if anybody in this room knows how much it is now. Please come and tell the people in Barbados what is the national debt of the National Housing Corporation as at the 17th of March, 2024. You've said that the program reduced the national debt to national housing. Come and let us know how much further it has been reduced. I will leave the rest for later.
Thank you, Ricky. It sounds as though Minister Sutherland has a number of answers to give to the Barbadian public, and rather than giving false hope, we would like some houses, actual houses that Barbadians can live in and enjoy and be comfortable in, because it can't just be those who are liked or who enjoy the company of the government that is getting houses in Barbados. So now we've covered education, youth, sports, culture, and we've just had our presentation on housing. I will now give the mic to Miss Karina Goodrich, who is going to cover health this evening. And we look forward to that presentation. When Karina is come with some notes that Barbadians need to hear. So Karina, here you go.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you so much for your patience as I got the mic on, and thank you for being here. And as I'm going to talk about health this evening, I'm glad that we are healthy enough to make it. So I always tell the audience to give a round of applause for yourself, for your life, because you're here. The viewers at home, I'm grateful for your life. Right now in Barbados, I've been watching the budget, and if we're thinking that QEH is the only health problem facility, we are recognizing that the primary health care needs a lot of attention. You see in the polyclinics, persons complaining about security, persons complaining about medication, and then you have the ministers there saying, the buildings are pretty aged and so on, and persons are complaining about the wait. When you have to wait in long lines, just remember this one thing. You're in pain and you're at the doctor for a reason. I like to simplify things, and I think we all can relate to that. We're there because we need medical attention, and we're relying on the government because we know that in private care, that things are very, very, very expensive. So we're heavily relying on the government to provide that care and to provide that care properly. That's me beginning slowly, warming up for them. Now, I was watching. I didn't recognize taxes all the time. You're paying a levy for your health care. And they're still borrowing over 200. Yes. Thank you. It wasn't me, it was the mic. So I was seeing that we are in so much debt already, and they're borrowing so much more money now than even in 2019. There was much buzz about the hiring of a chief executive officer, as you say, a CEO. Let's start there. I want to let the Barbados Labour Party know that, hey, the answer for our healthcare is not in the management style of a person or the hiring of a person, but we need to have a proper management system. Whether you follow the International Standard Organization, the 9001, choose a management system that's going to work. Because remember, when that person does well, you make a hit. And if that person that you hire as the CEO doesn't do well, then you make a miss. And our health is too important to rely on a hit or miss situation. And there is too much mismanagement. If the hospitals here are managed properly, then there wouldn't be so much waste. You have waste of materials. Then you have persons who are feeling the burden and the pain as you get yourself together. And we can't no longer wait for them to get it right. When you have persons facing non-communicable diseases, we have other persons waiting in long lines with cataract, and who feels it knows it. I said this before. You have persons waiting for surgery. Am I wrong? Am I right? We're not talking to the crickets tonight. We're talking to the Barbados public. We have persons waiting long. I don't know if you don't have family that are going through this, but I know people who are going through this, and they're waiting long for operations. And we heard it. We heard it while we were watching. When I was watching the budget, I heard it. You have persons with cataract issues. Yes? You have persons waiting with all kind of other, there's so much to mention. Hernias is another one. Cancer is another one that my sister here reminded me. So we cannot no longer wait on them to be borrowing, and the root cause of the problem is being forgotten. So that's my message here to the government. We have to look to the root cause of the issue instead of just borrowing, and thinking that we need a CEO to fix the issue. That is not the answer to our problem. We can't keep paying this amount of money because it's going to strain us. And when you are unhealthy, it affects productivity in the country. That's true. Another big issue that pains me because it's so simple to fix is the fact that we're hearing about mold all the time in institutions and in schools. And when you think of mold and black mold, that when you inhale that and you get sick, you're wondering, but wait, these people don't know how to call an environmental engineer and get a report. We're not just talking about bringing in industrial staff to fix the issue. We're talking about getting the reports, and those reports are going to give us the solution of how to fix the problem. And they're going to tell you how it can be done economically. Why have we not seen those reports? Why are we not getting those reports from the right persons? Not just industrial cleaners fixing the problem, and in the next few months that we end up in the same problem. We need permanent solutions. And I want Barbadians to get this in your mind. I like to laugh a lot, but this moment is not a laughing matter because this is health. And we got Dr. Jerome Walker when the Honorable Ralph Tarr was speaking. You were trying to distract the public by keep on talking about his brother being a consultant. That has nothing to do with the problems of health. Don't try to distract us from the issue. Stand on the issue and tell us how you're going to fix it. Daily while we sit and we watch the budget and we hear you talking and the people talking, there are people who are in a sick bed right now. There are insufficient supplies. There are insufficient beds. This is not a joking matter anymore. Not when me, myself, have to sit down 24 hours waiting just to be seen by a doctor. You're saying, okay, that you're going to increase the hours. You're going to increase the staff. Well, let us know. Let us know. Who are the staff you're going to bring? Is it going to be the Ghana nurses again? Or are you going to give our people here in Barbados, home drum must beat first, are you going to give them an increase in the salary? We need more diversity in this country too. When I hear people saying that, oh, our people don't qualify or they have to go overseas, yeah? Why are we not good enough, huh? You have to make way for your own people. Empower your people. We have to find a way. We can't always think that somebody that come from the UK or what's not, we are not saying that they can't come and they can't do a good job, because we know sometimes that those are the persons who would have been given the opportunity to go out and have the experience. But what I'm saying here is that we ourselves, the government, should make way for our people to be empowered in that way, that when you see applicants even having to apply for a post or position, whether it be the environmental officers that you're saying you have a shortage of, whether it be the CEO of the QEH or what's not, ensure that you've already gave way for these people to have the knowledge and the qualifications that we need to get into those posts. Because I want to see Barbados Barbadians go far. I want to see Barbadians on the map. We can no longer be the people that we are not good enough when it comes to getting these posts in health. And we have a prime minister that talk about bringing in 80,000 people into the country. If we can't even help who's here already, well, I don't want to be dangerous and say we're going to replace us. I hope you ain't trying to replace me, huh? I really hope you ain't trying to replace me. Because these healthcare problems might be a distraction. Because these things distracting us from things like corruption. We don't want to be distracted. We want to keep on point. 80,000 new people. Primary health care in trouble. So then how we going to fix the main hospital? I'm always watching the news. I even took the time to print out all of the news clips. There's one friend who would never like to lose in life. And that friend is called Google. You see Google? Google can give you so much information. Print the news, keep up to date with them. Because then we will know that even when it was Juliet Bynor Sutherland who was the chairman, executive chairman of the QEH, and I mean when she came on, she was saying, I don't want to talk too long, but I made sure I print it for you. It was a very nice photo, and she was having high hopes too. So I gone back to my point here, because that was when they were talking about the 40 million that QEH had and saying how things was running really well. And she said that she outlined a 10-point plan to transform the institution into a more patient-focused and customer-friendly. I like the words. It was very good use of words, but we all know that since then, in 2019, hey, we have a lot of issues still that needs to be fixed. We have the termites biting down Dr. David Thompson's polyclinic. They would have mentioned that. So again, that's another issue where you could call in the engineer, environmental engineer, to deal with issues like that. But enough is enough. I'm the voice of the people. The people here need somebody who's going to repeat it and say it over and over and over and over, and they will say it over and over and over. If you need the resources, get them as fast as possible. We don't want to be going in circles over and over with you saying, yes, we're going to get the operating theater running, and we're going to get all of these things that you're not getting done fast enough. Persons are asking about dental care too. And I find that if you as a prime minister are going to hire consultants and you have more than 10, how much ever, why it is that you can give better incentives and things that can actually cause the dentist to want to work with the government. Because if you're saying that the dentists are not interested, you know, there must be a reason why behind it. Not just going to Jamaica and say, well, you know, I'm going out to Jamaica and I'm going to talk to this woman who's the teacher at school, or I'm going to post somebody from overseas. There might be persons right here that are fully qualified as dentists that we can go to, that we can reach out to, that we can have on board, even if you have to enter some kind of partnership with them and speak with them. Because meanwhile, toothache is not nothing to play with. I can tell you, if you have a toothache, you'll be so angry when you walk through that room. Everybody will know John Boy's teeth hurting, Walter Maloney's teeth hurting, Ronnie's teeth hurting. Because you can see it, and it's a great pain to have. I bring you to the reality to recognize that these are not things that we can play with. Because meanwhile, while we are here waiting on the 29th, because we have Mr. Tarr, that is Sonia Brown. They left. It seemed to be a problematic ministry somehow, because if we're not having persons resigning from posts, then persons are just leaving. So that leaves us, the wonderful Democratic Labour Party, to always be the voice of the people, to always be the voice that are going to keep you up to date, to always be the voice that are going to remind you that this is a people who could run ministry. This is the people that are being trained. We have a president here. He makes sure that each and every one of us are knowledgeable in the areas that we need to be knowledgeable in. We come knowledgeable, but he's making sure that we increase in knowledge to know what we need to know.
Thank you, Karina.
Thank you.
They might be young, but they're passionate. They might be young, but they're knowledgeable, right? So thank you, Karina. So we've covered health, housing, education, youth, sports, and culture. And now coming to the crease, as the cricketers would say, would be Mr. Rashid Belgrave, who is well known among the youth and the young men of Barbados, among the legal fraternity, and who can aptly speak on roads and infrastructure. So, Rashid, take it away.
Hello. Hi. How are you? Have all my nice English accent tonight, yeah? Good night, Democratic Labour Party. And you know, before we proceed, I always like to set the pace or set the foundation, yeah? Now, a couple years back, if you remember, a Democratic Labour Party government was in power, right? And at the time, the Prime Minister, Fernando Stewart said, we are not going to the IMF. We would bite the bullet, regardless of whatever happened in the country, we are not going to the IMF. Fast forward to a Barbados Labour Party government who went to the IMF. Now we on loan after loan, borrowing loans to pay back loan. And the average person, even if you went to the credit union and you borrow a $5,000 unsecured loan, it is difficult to go to another institution to borrow money to pay back the current loan, right? Or the previous loan. So I would say that Fernando Stewart had some sort of foresight to know that it would be difficult to go and borrow money that we cannot pay back. So we have to give credit to a person who saw down the line that in 2024, the amount of money we have borrowed, our children and grandchildren and great-grands will have to be paying that off for years and years to come. So in setting the foundation for the argument for roadworks now, the key word is absenteeism. Why? They said mere cares, right? Okay. They said mere cares. They promised us a hotel in Bay Street. It is absent, correct? Yeah. They promised us 10,000 houses in 6 years, right? It is absent, correct? How many capital works programs have they promised and nothing have come to fruition? So the roadworks program is what? Absent. And the only reason that you're seeing roads being rebuilt and repaired right now is because of the International World Cup. Cricket, the baby of the country. We only bow and fix roads because we have a tournament coming to Barbados, which will be over in about 4 weeks, and then we back to square one. And where the money come from to resurface the roads? Where, if we are broke right now and we have no money to spend and we have to borrow money, where did the money come from to repair these roads? So that means after the ICC tournament is finished, we will be in debt, correct? And one thing you don't know, they're finding difficulty to sell the tickets. So the event itself may not pull in as much revenue as we would like. So there's no money to spend. There's no income to rely on. So where would you find money to build roads in the country? Barbados is now known as Pothole City. The amount of projects that, whether it has been started or stopped or just have not been started at all, there's nothing to base their credibility on in this country in terms of roadworks. And I would always say that we have one of the best roadworks ministers that the country has ever seen. And housing ministers as well too. There are only 2 housing ministers, well, we're going on facts. There's only 2 housing ministers that build the most houses in Barbados. One, for any BLP, I won't mention his name, but the other is Michael Lashley, honorable. Only 2 that have ever built the amount of houses in Barbados that help the poor people. Rent to own, the help program. What programs do the current government provide to us that we can rely on? hopeless. Thank you very much. Not a hope program, hopeless. And the project that was supposed to be started in Lancaster, absent. So to revitalize what I'm saying, the key and operative word for this government is absenteeism. And the most absent person in the picture is who? That's supposed to be debating in the House of the House of Parliament on the estimates and cannot be found. But yet, is opening a brand new business for the upper echelons in this country. Where is the focus? Who are you paying tribute to? The average man or the select few? Again, we go back. One prime minister had the foresight to know that it would be difficult to borrow money on top of money, and they decided not to go to the IMF. So we must give a little credit to Frandel Stewart, if not all. Yeah, I know some people clapping and some people aren't, but let us be factual, because they said mere cares. And the reason you believe a fiat $100 bill is a real $100 bill because it's made to look like the real thing. So when they capitalize on, Frandel not speaking, he's not coming out, that was basically the $100 bill being turned into something corrupt, something imaginary, something that does not exist. And his actions spoke for him. He didn't have to speak. If you realize where are we going now, what the interest rate is going to look like next year or the next couple of years, because it is more expensive to borrow on the international market than the domestic market. And if you're paying attention to what is going on the international scene, you have Russia, you have Ukraine, yeah, you have Gaza, you have Haiti, you have Myanmar, you have the China, India, China, and Pakistan. So tell me, if the world explodes, who is going to take care of us? Because we are relying on the international market. We are not even attempting to produce our own food in the next couple of years. Why? Because we send everything to Suriname. Who is this government catering to? The international elite or the local Barbadian public? We can't even get a road fixed. We can't even talk about road works because our roads are full of potholes. We can't drive from here today without having to go down Nasco to buy a suspension or some brakes. These roads are destroying our vehicles, and then they're going to tell you, write to the Ministry of Works and apply for compensation. You know when buses get into accidents, when you get the payout on the compensation? 20 years after. So tell me when you will get your vehicle repaired. By the time they may start bringing out spaceships, cars will be obsolete. No, let us pay attention. I would like to name one completed project in Barbados that was done by the Barbados Labour Party in terms of resurfacing or repaving roads. Hold on, let me pause. I have done 0. There has been no, how to put this? There has been nothing of substance, of essence from the Labour Party that we as Barbadians can rely on and say, well, they did this for us. What have they done for the public? Sufferation. How it is that they could get in the House of Parliament and say, oh, we have over $1 gazillion in reserves. And everybody's still saying that the price of food is still increasing. The price of gas is still increasing. And don't forget, they introduced a tax at the pump. So where is this money going? They introduced a levy on health care, and still the hospital is in disrepute. They impose on us the solid waste tax, something that was making over $500 and something million a year. And if you don't believe, I agree with you, but if you don't believe me, let's do the mathematics. I know, but let me do the mathematics. We like to be realistic in this party. If you had, let me say, 100 households paying the solid waste tax at $10, only $10, and we know some people solid waste tax is coming for 30, 60, and 100, and we don't talk about commercial businesses. That's $100,000 from 10 households, right? And we do that per month. How many households are there in Barbados? So if you're making 100,000 or for only 10 households, tell me how she can make over 10,000. Thank you very much. Party money gone. So understand, people is easy. Anything complex, you break it down into simple components, and then you start to filter out. Thank you very much. You want this microphone? Yeah. So people of the Democratic Labour Party, we need to remove the wool from over our eyes. We need to stop being the sheep on the pasture and become the wolves, the political wolves in this environment, and start to attack the government. Because as you can see, they're starting to unfold. They're starting to break. They're starting to become what, sorry to say, what the LP had looked like in his coming down to this final years. A lot of quarreling, a lot of bickering, people crossing the floor, people on all kind of criminal charges. What kind of government is this? Tell me, what government is this? How are they looking out for us? How are they looking out for even the young people, sports people? The only tournament in Barbados that the Minister of Sport has come out and spoken on or supported was the international cricket. What happened to hockey? What happened to netball? What happened to football? What happened to squash? What happened to badminton? Tell me. All they do is put up fences and nothing else. Talk to me, madam. Is my time up? Thank you very much. We're going the whole night in one more minute because we need to get out this message. We need to move forward and we need to keep speaking. We need to keep speaking on these issues. Thank you very much. Democratic Labour Party, I always want to thank you for the audience. But when I come, I don't just come to bring energy. I come to bring facts. I come to bring an argument. I don't come to just chastise the government and say they're not doing anything. We could just look at Charles Chocolate, not building fences. Then we have Endaho on the garment. We won't list out all the names, but we have Sonia Ho. I won't disrespect anybody, but it rang with brown. Anyhow, we need to move the party forward. We need to unite. We need to come together. Just hear me out. We need to come together as a party and as one unit. Going against the Barbados Labour Party, we cannot be anything but, we cannot be subpar or we cannot be equal to. Whatever policies we put out have to be overarching, they have to be better, they have to be more significant, and they have to put Barbados in the better position that they are now. Times are getting too hard. Harder than that, there's an increase in crime. And the correlation between not having money and the increase in crime, they always correlate together. They go together. So what we need to do is to come up with policies, not 2024 policies, but 2025, 2026, and 2027 policies to ensure that we have a Barbados who's prosperous and longing for profit and prosperity. Longevity is the name of this game in politics, and we have to come together. The Democratic Labour Party, we have to come together. Thank you very much.
You see why you need the voices of the youth? Let's be real for you. So thank you, Comrade Rashid. We have a couple housekeeping matters. We've opened up the gate by the field to accommodate more parking. So those parked in the parking lot, please pay attention to these two numbers in case you have to move your vehicle. MA 3404, that is MA 3404 and PA 2856. You're kindly asked to move your vehicles over to the pasture. Thank you so much. Now, we are moving on. I'm going to do the donation now because St. James North has been so hospitable to us, and the chair has been so open. The executive have been so open to us. And, we get some people parking where they should be parking at the moment. And we get ready for our president's address. We'll take up the donation for St. James North, for the branch, for its operation, and the levy. Right, so we're going to have two members of the executive, Mr. Graves, Brother Graves, and Kathy Webster. They're going to go around while we're getting ready for our president. They're going to do that while we get ready. So we've covered a number of issues this evening. We have an audience both online and live here. We thank everybody who's been here and who are continuing to listen online. So, our president, Dr. Ronnie Yearwood, is next up, and we know he comes with his facts, his figures, and he is not a voice to be discounted in any way, shape, or form in the political landscape of Barbados. This man is young. He's energetic, he's knowledgeable, he's an expert in many areas, too many to mention, from international trade to law to sociology to political science. He covers a number of issues, and he has been guiding this party and doing an amazing job for the party. So we thank our president for being here tonight, and he will address the issues of the economy. And we know that he comes well equipped and knowledgeable. I know everybody waiting to hear what the president got to say tonight, but he's delivered lashes when they need to be delivered. And he speaks truth when it needs to be said. Two things that you cannot ever put aside when you have a leader like him. So, thank you, Cleo. The president is well loved in his party. So, Mr. President, I leave it with you, Dr. Ronnie Yearwood. We welcome Dr. Yearwood. We welcome his presentation. Thank you, sir.
Good night, everyone. I want to start by saying God's blessings and mercies to all of us here. It's so good to see all of you, to see this room packed out, to see all of the viewers online. And the General Secretary just reminded me that sometimes copying is the best form of flattery, because the other people are trying to hold a similar meeting, and for the first time in their life, they realize that they need to have community meetings, because the Democratic Labour Party is having a community people's house meeting tonight. I am going to keep my comments short, unlike somebody else from the other place as well, because I really want to hear what you have to say tonight. That's what we're here to do. We've made this meeting in this particular format because we really want to engage with the people of Barbados. This is something that we're trying. We've taken the People's House and we're taking it to the road. We're going to do these meetings all over Barbados. Look out, St. Lucie, St. Peter, St. Andrew, St. John, St. Michael, we are coming to you. Christchurch, yes, I'm forgetting here. You see, this is the problem you start calling names and you forget somebody. Look, I come to everybody. We are coming to you, and I just want Barbadians to know that we are here to listen to them, to hear them, to understand their views. So I am looking forward to the feedback, to your ideas tonight, that we can take them forward as we become a government. I want to thank all the presenters so far tonight for their work, for their presentations, and for the engagement. Let's give them a big round of applause. And I want to thank the media for being here tonight. I'm not telling tales from schools, but the media had on some red shirts, and there was concerns if it would offend us. That does not, look, you know what, this is Barbados, and that is the least thing that we will be offended by, because your corporate colors happen to be red. But if you need a yellow shirt next time, we have no problem with providing you a cell. But I really want to thank you for being here and being and being with us. You're part of the governance of this country, and it's important that we support the work that you do as much as you support the work that we do for all of Better Barbados. I want to start on a really personal note. We've had a lot of calls for unity in the Democratic Labour Party, and I would express and endorse that. But to say that they're not only calls for unity, there's a practice of unity as well. And in that, I welcome all the Democratic Labour Party members here tonight, but importantly, and also, I welcome Barbadians here tonight, because this is not only about the unity of the Democratic Labour Party, this is about the unity of the country of Barbados. We can only do better together as a country. The Democratic Labour Party is only one part of this country. At the end of the day, and I've said this before, when we win a government, we do not simply govern as the Democratic Labour Party, we govern as the government of Barbados for all the people of this country. When you get sick and you go to the QH, as Sister Karina was talking about, they don't look and ask you what kind of blood you got, if you got DLP or BLP blood. If you're dying, you're dying. When your child comes to school and it needs to learn and the schools aren't fixed, DLP or BLP, your child ain't learning. If you drive on the road and you drop in a pothole, DLP or BLP, you're a Barbadian, you drop in a pothole. At the end of the day, what we have to recognize is that this country belongs to all of us, and we have to take it back for us and for our children and for future generations. It's about us. Now, I want to begin on a personal note. And Tyra addressed it somewhat, because this government has been somewhat, let's be realistic. The comments from the Minister, Charles Griffith, related to Tyra were sexist, misogynist, it was inappropriate, it bordered on racism and colorism, and it was wrong. And it should never be condoned. It's not a joke, it's nothing to laugh at. Then we had the Minister of Health, who thought it upon himself and fit upon himself to attack my wife. And you know, there are lines that you cross in politics, and there are lines that you do not cross in politics. Look, today is St. Patrick's Day, so let me start by wishing everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day, because my wife has and happens to be of Irish origin, from both sides. Their father and their mother are Irish. And, you know, you go to school, you go to university, you meet someone, you fall in love, you have children, you get married. Aww. That's the whole gambit of it. And I would not expect that I would have had in Barbadian politics in 2024 such racist, such sexist, such misogynistic comments from a former Minister of Foreign Affairs who should have known better, because he has represented this country at the highest levels, and it was nothing to take a cheap shot at. What I recognize by this government, they tend to major in minors. Yeah. And that's the problem with them. A lot of majoring in minors instead of dealing with the issues, as Sister Karina mentioned, in front of them. You sought to call into question the color or the race or whatever of the new minister of, not the new minister, the new CEO of the hospital, and somehow you had to bring my wife into the argument. Albeit, I'm sure he will smartly say he never calls your name, but let's be realistic, we know what you're talking about, so don't play foolish, there's no need to play foolish. And my message to him is that there is no place in Barbados for that kind of politics. There is no place in Barbados for that kind of behavior, and there's no place in Barbados for race baiting. And if that is the kind of Barbados that the Barbados Labour Party is intent on creating, it is the kind of party and it is the kind of government that we in the Democratic Labour Party must stand against, because we know that we can do better. And that is why I said at the beginning of this, at the end of the day, we are all in this together. We are all in this together. This 166 square miles, this is our home, and we have to build it together. Now, I want to welcome in our presence, and I am sure he will be honored that the president of the party is doing the welcoming, because usually the other way around. And I want to, and everybody laughing because I know what he can do now. I want to welcome Mr. Michael Lashley, who will probably be late for his own funeral. But welcome. welcome, Michael. This evening, we look forward to your contribution in the question and answer. Now, the government had the recent estimate exercises, and I want to set a little bit of context for this, so to give as we go through the question and answer. The reality is, and Karina mentioned the high borrowing, Rashid mentioned the high borrowing. Let's get some figures on this. $14.5 billion of debt that the Barbados is carrying at the moment. About $5.5 billion is foreign debt. The government, in recognizing that the trajectory that they're on, they're now trying to shift the debt profile to get more local debt. You know, as I said today on Brass Stats, if you're borrowing in foreign dollars, obviously you got to pay it back in foreign dollars. If you're borrowing on the local market, which is what the Democratic Labour Party's strategy was previously, you're paying back here in the local market, and you can have conversations with the people that you're borrowing from. It's not that you can have a conversation with international borrowers in the same way. Let's be realistic, because when you owe the money, you owe the money. So Barbados is at the moment to the tune of $14.5 billion. We have an aging population, and that means that we have a reduced workforce. We have a reduced productive sector to contribute to the repayment of that debt. That means that people here on this platform, most of us, will have to be repaying that debt. Added to that, we have to start thinking about care for the elderly in this country, because we have to think carefully about how we're going to finance that with our aging population. So these are our statistics. More old people, less young people, high debt. Recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for disaster. We are also hurtling towards a debt trap. But what I want to do now is also give this a little bit of context in terms of the debt restructuring and where we are and the effects that had on Barbados. And then we're going to talk about some ways out of this as we proceed in the night. So currently, Barbados is now number 62 in terms of the United Nations Human Development Index. We moved from 2017, 2018 at number 56 to 62. Of all of our Caribbean neighbors, we are doing the worst. St. Kitts moved from 73 to 51. Antigua from 74 to 54. Bahamas from 60 to 57. Trinidad from 63 to 60. Grenada from 78 to 73. St. Vincent from 84 to 81. Every single country around us in the Caribbean is improving. So the government is constantly blaming on COVID, ash, and the freak storm. I bet you tomorrow in the budget you can hear COVID, ash, and the freak storm, or sometime during this week that is going to be used as an excuse. The reality is, and this is the question I want you to bear in mind, why are all of our neighbors in the Caribbean improving and we are not? They went through the same COVID, some of them went through the same storms, some of them had the same issues with ash. How are they doing better on the United Nations Human Development Index, which is monitoring and measuring things like education, access to health care, youth development policy, infrastructure, housing, all of these things they are doing better at, and we are actually declining at the moment. That is just the reality that we are facing. Now, add to that the debt restructuring program. And I want you to understand what the government did in this debt restructuring program was intentional. I want you to understand that where we are was a choice by the Barbados Labour Party government, and a choice not to prioritize you, the people of Barbados. The choice was made to follow the strictures of an IMF program over what is good for the people of Barbados. Because if you were following what was good for the people of Barbados, there is no way that our Human Development Index qualifiers will be moving in the wrong direction. So when the government went through the debt restructuring program, the government decided to change the debt profile for some of the people that had loaned it money. Now, what that meant for you, and this is a choice, they wrote off $1.3 billion for the NIS. That's your money. Gone. Wipe out. And then now they're complaining that the NIS is in trouble. Well, it's in trouble because you wrote off the money that you owed it. That's why the NIS is in trouble. Do not let anybody fool you about any other qualifying factors, because when you read the actual report, it points to that fact. It tells you the biggest problem facing the NIS was the debt write-off. That's one. Then they write off $1.6 billion to the Central Bank of Barbados. Then they write off $100 million to the University of the West Indies. Think about the three institutions that they chose to jeopardize in order to get their debt restructuring program to get IMF money. The NIS, UE, and the Central Bank of Barbados. Three things that are pillars of Barbados: your education, your monetary and financial stability, and your pensions. And you chose those three institutions to build the debt restructuring program that you tried to brag about on. Therefore, the debt restructuring program has been built on the backs and of the blood and sweat of ordinary Barbadians. All of you in this room are suffering and paying for this because the government of Barbados decided that you were to suffer and not others. And it gets worse. Let me tell you the other part of the story. In making that decision, guess who the government did not cut and did not jeopardize their loans? The private sector. So the government extended the money that it owed to private sectors. It changed the terms. You can pay, they can get back the money a little bit later. You get back some percentages lower, but it did not write them off. It chose to write off the money that it owed essentially to the people of Barbados. Your hard-earned money that you were paying over to the National Insurance Scheme, your hard-earned taxes that you were paying over to ensure your children were educated, your hard-earned money that you were paying over to ensure that this country's dollar is stable, your hard-earned money that you were paying over to ensure that Barbados was functioning. And that is what the government of Barbados did. That if that is not an act of wickedness, if it's not an act of treason, and if that is not an affront on the people of Barbados, I do not know what is. I do not know what else and what worse that they could do at this point to inflict upon the people of Barbados than to basically steal your money. Because that write-off was a theft. And we need to understand that. We need to put that in our minds. It cannot be a 7-day wonder. When you leave this room, I want you to start talking again about the National Insurance Scheme write-off. I want you to go up there and understand that the government of Barbados jeopardized education by writing off money owed to the University of the West Indies. I want you to understand the government jeopardized the Central Bank of Barbados. I know they're going to tell you, man, it's just a little balance sheet thing, and they can print more money, but we don't want them printing more money by jeopardizing the Central Bank by writing off $1.6 billion. These are the issues that we face when we think about this budget. So when you think about this budget, I want you to put it in the context of that debt restructuring. I want you to recognize that the government has been following an IMF program, and we are where we are because of that program. These are deliberate choices to enter into our IMF program under which we are currently on a stranglehold. And that IMF program was not an accident. Because when you look at the data, when you look at the pronouncements of the IMF, when you look at the evidence, it appears that the Barbados Labour Party, I can say appear and allege, because I don't want to get nobody lock me up, appears that they were in discussions previously, because the IMF says things like prior, before. That means that this was a set-up. And when you went to the polls in 2018 to vote, you did not vote for our IMF program. You did not go to vote for it. It was not on the ballot. Do not let anybody fool you about how we knew that what we were entering into. No, it was not. The Barbados Labour Party never made it clear the terms or the nature of any program that they were going to enter into. That program was sprung on the people, and tonight we have to ask the question, and we're going to ask it till we get an answer: is White Oak still on the books of Barbados receiving money for a debt restructuring program? White Oak's got more money out of Barbados than Greece. Greece had a bigger public debt than Barbados. How are you making more money or just the equivalent on the backs of Barbadians? How are you taking a cut off of restructuring the debt of Barbados to the tune of over $27 million, I believe it was? These are the realities. This is the context where they want you to understand that the budget coming on Monday has to be placed within. I want you to understand, it doesn't matter what they tell you in that budget, if they're going to raise taxes, lower taxes, build more roads. You know what? They will not achieve any of it, because the last budget, the Barbados government has only achieved 20% of the things. I did the math, I did the counting. 20% of the things that they said they were going to do is what they've achieved. 80% have been left unchecked. They've been doing nothing. Ask them with the houses, the QH refurbishment, all those promises, the youth program, the education reform, the infrastructure development. None of it has been done. So tomorrow when you hear all the fancy talk about debt to GDP ratio, and you know, we're fulfilling the IMF program and we have surpluses, and you hear all of these things, ask yourself, what does that mean for you? Ask yourself, when you go in the supermarket with $100, what can it get you? Ask yourself, if you have declining access to health care and you have to wait 5 days at the QH before you see a doctor, what does a debt to GDP ratio mean for you? Ask yourself, when there's a wait list of 2 years for a speech therapist at the clinic, what does that mean for you? Ask yourself, when you can't access dental care at the polyclinics, what does that mean for you? Ask yourself, when there's no nurse or there's no simple blood pressure machines, what does a debt to the GDP ratio mean? Ask yourself all of these questions. When all the fancy things are listed in the budget, how does it affect you when you go in the supermarket and one flying fish is $1.50 or chicken is $30? This is reality. You can't find sweet potatoes. $8 a pound. These is real things. Because sometimes you would believe that the current ministers of government don't shop in the supermarket or don't buy the food in Barbados. You go in the supermarket, you turn around twice with $100, you come up with half a bag, and you still ain't got nothing in it. Let me go through this. Because y'all gonna come to the mic, but let me get a little piece here. You buy a chicken for $30. That is 30 for the 70. You buy a bag of potatoes, depending, $10. So, yeah, depending, you get $10. That's $40. That's just potatoes and chicken. You ain't got no vegetables in there. You put in a bag of onions for about how much? $3 depending. You put in a little bit of garlic because the food gotta get a little flavor. That's another $3. That's $6. You want to buy a little bit of rice. That's what? Yeah. So, exactly, if you eat about $35 for a 10-pound bag, well, that's the $100. That's the $100 gone. The money gone. You don't got the fruit. You don't got the vegetables. You don't buy the milk. If you want to buy fresh milk, that's about $20 for the 2 liter. If you're buying the pasteurized milk, the shelf one, that's about another $7, depending. And these are the realities that a budget in Barbados has to confront. Because the reality is, what are the priorities of this government when it comes to you? And add to that, if you send your child to daycare, that's about $100 or $150 a week. And then you might go provide food depending on the daycare. So you never know. That's another $100. That's 2, 4, 6, 8. That's $800 a month. Let me say $1,000 a month, because it depends. You might go pay the bus fare. That's daycare. That includes the food. And if you got 2 children, well, that's a whole nother story. And when I go on vacation, food bill up. These are just the realities that a budget has to confront. So when you think, and people don't break it down, some people don't break it down, listen, you got $14 billion in debt, right? The government spends about $4 billion to run itself. The Barbados economy is reckoned to be about $12, $13 billion economy. The governor of the central bank 2 weeks ago says the economy is growing, but it's not growing to benefit the people of Barbados. Essentially, that's what he said. He said it ain't coming down. So how it growing if you are not benefiting? So something is off there. It can't be growing because if it is growing, it has to be benefiting you, the people of Barbados. It cannot just be benefiting a few in this country. The majority of you have to be able to benefit from the economy of Barbados. Something is off. So add to that restructuring program, add to the fact that the economic growth is not trickling down to you, and you recognize that the priorities of the government are wrong. The priorities of the government are not you, the people of Barbados. The priorities of the government are for itself. You had an estimates budget. And this is not to go off track. This is your content. You had an estimates budget. Where was the Prime Minister and the substantive Minister of Economic Affairs and Finance? Somebody messaged me and told me that they wonder if tomorrow she will appear by hologram because she's not been here presently. And that has to be a problem. That should be a concern for you. Your concerns have to be the debt, the priorities of this government, the cost of living crisis that we're enduring, or some people call it the cost of endurance, because it can't be living because you're basically getting by, you're enduring. These have to be the things that are at the front of your mind. And the question today that I asked on Brass Stats is, can we as a people in Barbados genuinely, and it's a serious question, can we take another 5 years? Can we even take another 2 years of this current government and this current IMF program? Because the state of Barbados, we are going backwards. Barbados is in serious decline. We know that. We understand the problem, we understand the issues. Now, the question before us is, how do we get out of this? And that's what we're going to discuss tonight. We want to hear from you to understand, how are we going to get out of this together? Because we could come here all night, we could bellyache about the 10,000 problems, we know what they are. But we have to think, how do we do better by the people of this country? What are the areas and the places that we can grow the economy of Barbados? How do we grow the economy when it comes to renewable energy? How do we grow the economy when it comes to offshore education? How do we grow the economy when it comes to the cultural sector? How do we provide jobs and opportunities for our young people so that they can live out the lives that they want? And tonight, that is what I want to hear from you. I want you to help us send a message to the government of Barbados that, one, you are not going to take this anymore as Barbadians. This goes beyond being members of the Democratic Labour Party. I am sure there's some here who are not DLP members, because this is a community meeting. This is not simply a DLP branch meeting. We are now talking to the people of this country. We are talking to all of you, because as I said at the beginning, when we govern, we have to govern for all the people of Barbados. So in order to govern for all the people of Barbados, we have to talk to all the people of Barbados. So tonight, we want to hear what you have to say about your country and how you think together, because we have to do this together. We talk a lot about unity in the Democratic Labour Party. I am moving that conversation beyond that. I don't want to hear nothing but the unity, because the Democratic Labour Party is united. The Democratic Labour Party is one party. Does that mean that we don't have family squabbles? No, it does not. You will have them. But the reality is not the squabble, it is how you deal with it, and you deal with it in a way that is mature, responsible, and respectful of each other, not only as members of the Democratic Labour Party, but as brothers and sisters, not only in Christ, but as brothers and sisters of what? Barbados. Because at the end of the day, when I look around and I look there, we are all Barbadians, and we have to take our communities and we have to take our country back, because that at the end of the day is what matters. And I am not calling for only a united Democratic Labour Party. We've done that. Water under the bridge. After tonight, no more conversations about that. You know what we're calling for? A united Barbados under the Democratic Labour Party and led by a Democratic Labour Party, because that is where this conversation needs to go. That is what we have to do. That is the fight that we need to take. It is time to unify this country. No more this and them and us and them and higher echelons and lower echelons and red people and this people. It is wrong, it is disingenuous, and it will not stand for it. I will not stand for it. We have to do better by our country. We have to do better by our people, because at the end of the day, this is the only country that we have. This is her rock right here. These 166 square miles, this is our place. And if we set about to divide ourselves between this and heights and territories, and you live in the village and you wear red shirt, and you wear yellow shirt, and you wear orange shirt, and you from this place and you from that place, we will fail. Use a man, use a woman, and we can't think because we don't want women around. You don't. No. This party has to represent a new Barbados, and we can do it. I believe that the Democratic Labour Party's best days are ahead of it. We have turned over a new chapter. We are looking to the future with strength, with unity, with these young people here. We can do anything. Anything is possible. And tonight, I want the media to report this. The Democratic Labour Party calls for a united Barbados. That is what they are calling for. And on that note, because I could see Stacey looking at me through my left eye, I will hand it over, and Stacey will open the floor for questions and engagement, because that is what we came here tonight in this first town hall community style meeting, the People's House. Realize what we call it, because this is your house and we are your servants. You just remember that.
Okay. All right. We are United Barbados. Don't forget the nation. Remember that when you're writing tonight and tomorrow. The DLP calling for a united Barbados under the Democratic Labour Party. Now, we have a full house here, and we are very happy to be here, hosted by the St. James North, but also assisted by St. Lucie, as far as I understand it. So we thank you for unity among all the branches who are represented here. We thank our first Vice President, Mr. Michael Ashley, for joining us as well. We acknowledge you. And so we get started with anyone in the audience. We're going to look at questions that we might have online as well. But any questions you have for the panel, any suggestions you have for how Barbados can move forward, whether it be addressing the issue of youth, whether it be addressing the economy, health, housing is still a major issue. We still have roads and infrastructure, and of course, we know we have an Attorney General who likes to talk, right? But we want action, right? Well, yes, he has a smile that is known around Barbados, right? But we want to hear from you, because the People's House really was conceived to hear from the people of Barbados. What matters to you? We know cost of living is still a major concern. How do you all see what the government is doing impacting you? We know the president just went through it, the debt. When you go to the supermarket, you could buy 3 items and you spend $100, right, ladies and gentlemen? Anybody else has any questions for Tyra, who is here representing the youth very, very, very well, I might add. We know we have Rashid, who would have spoken. I have some questions that we had from earlier episodes of the People's House that we've kept, and that may be more pertinent tonight. So we will start off with maybe Rashid and Tyra. After the spotlight has been shown on the many issues of the National Stadium, sports, youth, and culture, can or should we have confidence in a seemingly PR-dominant and reactive government, particularly when you have a minister that seems more inept than anything else? Tyra, you want to go? Or Rashid? Rashid, you look like if you could do with some energy and attention, all right? And I know you like to talk about sports, and you would have seen what's happening with the stadium and the stadia that's supposed to be going around the communities of Barbados. Tell us your thoughts, Rashid.
Yeah. Push up something. Yeah, sorry, we're just pushing up the mic. First and foremost, we would just like to congratulate Comrade Tyra on the personal investigation she did and brought certain things to light with regards to the National Stadium. No, in their manifesto, I think it was the Covenant of Hope, which was the last manifesto. And if you don't know, a covenant is a promise. So the promise you hope. Hope is intangible, and a promise is a comfort to anyhow, let me keep moving on. So in the Covenant of Hope, they promised that they would have built a number of mini stadiums, 15 mini stadiums, yeah? Now, if you have been living in Barbados for a while, you would know that regardless of which government comes, the National Stadium has been falling structurally, visually, for a number of years. So to come and promise us 15 stadiums, whereas our national stadium is deteriorating at such a rapid pace, it is impractical. Now, if you know anything about sports, maintaining a pavilion can be very expensive. Case in point, you have a pavilion, it sits there. The cricketers may come on the weekend, may have some football during the week, but other than that, what else do you use the pavilion for? Now, apart from certain communities like the Pine or Impere, which really use their pavilions for other community sports like dominoes, table tennis, and what's not, even as a layman sport, there are no other pavilions in the country that is actively used day by day. So basically, you would have 16 elephants sitting down in Barbados doing nothing and accruing expenses each day and every day. So I just think it was nonsensical. It wasn't well thought out, which is just like all the other plans that the Barbados Labour Party has came up with. Anything they put their hand on, it does not come to fruition. Why? Because it's not thought out. It's just hype, and it's just boast, and it's just, I don't want to use the young people language, but it's just a lot full of talk. Idle boast. So in terms of the stadiums, I know it's something that would not come to fruition, because you're looking at something where you're trying to encourage football, netball, basketball. Now we already have infrastructure in the country in terms of pavilions in several communities. Now, I like to be a little practical. Now, if one community next to one another, which is 5 minutes away, I don't believe that you should have 2 pavilions, which is like 5 minutes away, right? The cost of operating two pavilions will be high. If you allow both communities to share one pavilion, right? First thing what you will do, you will expand the number of persons who will be coming to the pavilion. You will have more members to tap into in terms of establishing sports, netball teams, basketball teams, and then you can branch out and start to move from there. And then when you, in terms of spending, because I'm a frugal spender, right? I cheat. I don't like to spend a lot of money because they don't have a lot of money to spend. And the country ain't got no money to spend. So if you're thinking practically, you would invest in something that could expand to multiple communities and take the savings and invest it in something else. So if you got 5 caretakers, you don't need to pay 5. You could pay 1 and invest the money in something else. It's all about using what you have and not what you don't have. Yeah? It's about thinking practical, and that is how young people think. Because we we are growing up in a society where things are a bit harder, it's a bit more difficult to spend money. I know Auntie Mia asking for us to procreate a little bit more, but we ain't got no money to procreate all the days of your life. Nobody don't run around with 10 or 15 children no more. Why? Because it's too expensive. So if the cost of living is expensive, the cost of maintaining any infrastructure will be expensive as well. So like I said, the generation today, we think a little more practical. We take it a little more on the ground, and we take it a little more commonsensical. So thank you very much.
Michael, opportunity to speak. We know you were slated to speak tonight.
And actually, when it came down by the houses, my car broke down. I don't know what caused it. I don't know if it is the houses and the look of the houses or what, but be that as it may, though, I want to congratulate every speaker actually who spoke this evening. And I don't want to, again, intervene on the rights of the audience here tonight, but I believe that I want to give two takeaways. If I was the Attorney General in Barbados, what I would want to see tomorrow, because I believe a government that have a 30-seat majority, there's some low-hanging fruits and there's some things that really touch and concern ordinary people in Barbados. It's one thing that I would like to see happen in Barbados, and they're always pushing for it. When I examine the criminal justice system in Barbados, and when I look at our legal aid scheme in Barbados, there's nothing in the legislation that gives a right to a disabled person in Barbados the right to legal aid. And that is a low-hanging fruit that I believe if a simple amendment that we can take to Parliament, that we as an opposition party could announce in the budget, that if we get government, that we will make a simple amendment to the Legal Aid Act so that every disabled person in Barbados will have a right to legal aid, and be speaking about the whole and broad concept of access to justice and these things that we have to speak about. And I don't want to call the Attorney General lazy, because I'm complimenting him respectfully. But if I go further to look and examine the criminal justice system and what low-hanging fruits that we can have tomorrow, that if we go there and we announce that this is our policy, because we care about every single Barbadian. We care about the disabled people too. And it is this government that amended the Road Traffic Act to make it an offense to park in a spot destined for disabled people. But what they're seeking to do now is to amend it and to increase the penalty. But we have already done it, so we will take credit for it. Okay? I also have an issue, and Walter will join me on this as a trade unionist, in relation to, but I had a matter recently with ash workers. The problem in Barbados is, with respect to those workers, they don't know whether they are employee or they don't know if they are independent contractor. Okay? They don't even get any independent advice on the way going forward and how to treat to the contract and speak to the contract, basically. Okay? No. And in the context or environment of a union, the unions are no, in fact, they're not militant anymore. They're not standing up for the rights of these workers. And if you have workers in Barbados, particularly females, working at the side of the road, and you don't even have any toilet facilities for them, I mean, what does it say for a government? And indeed, what happened is that a female worker, of course, wanted to to go and deal with some stuff, and she fell in a well because they had no facilities for her. And we speak about decent work, we speak about decent wages, we speak about conditions. All of these touch and concern ordinary people. Yes, you can speak all about the figures, you can speak about the debt, but I want to deal with bread and butter issues that touch and concern working class people and poor people in this country. Okay? Now, I get enough here, because again, a low-hanging fruit. Let us go to Parliament on Tuesday and say to the Attorney General, any piece of legislation, any amendment you make will not be blocked by any of your members because you have a majority. You can't blame the ash, you can't blame this on these pieces of legislation that are so important to the criminal justice system and to the justice system as a whole. So what I want to say is that if we, as a party, we keep on speaking, propelling, projecting, agitating, and going forward and say, look, we as a party that passed legislation that established the National Insurance Scheme, the Severance Payment Scheme, Sugar Workers Minimum Act. Then we went and passed the Employment Rights Act. We passed the Health and Safety at Work Act. Domestic Violence Act. Well, that was the act that was named after a particular person who I know have particular specialties in domestic violence law, and who when that person comes to practice, there will be a specialist in domestic violence law. But I will not mention the name, no, because we're in a community meeting. But let me say to you, again, let us go to the Community Legal Aid Act again, and let us say, look, I want persons, poor people, who get dismissed by employers, because the employers can engage a King's Counsel. They ain't come to a poor lawyer like me. The employers can employ a law firm. But the body that get fired, who now is a man of straw, now have to look for legal representation. And why it is that we cannot amend the Community Legal Aid Act and make it mandatory that employment matters, particularly with poor people, that they are covered by a legal aid scheme. That's the point I want to make.
Provide more funding for legal aid.
And of course, provide more funding for legal aid. That's for my learned friend here. My learned friend, I'm going to say, my learned friends, I'm going to say. But that's all I have to say. But I believe that a trump card, we should say, look, you have 2 attorney generals. Sorry, have 1. My apologies, I'm making mistakes this evening, but it's because I got here late. Okay? I got here late. But let me say this. That, and I can speak on and on and on and on about these little things that just calls for a simple amendment. A simple amendment. And if we keep on, and if we are serious about the criminal justice system, and if we are serious about dealing with people at the lower end, and if we are dealing with the system as a whole, I want to hear you all tonight about how we are going to stem this youth violence, what mechanisms we can put in place to deal with it frontally, instead of talking and holding shows, not like Hope Foundation, Hope that going to hold some PR thing next week, handing over 40 keys or something like that. We know 40 keys from since 2018 to now. Imagine that. Out of 10,000 houses. But I want to end here. I don't want to steal your thunder. And I know we're near to Thunder Bay, but I don't want to steal your thunder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lashley. You see why you need the voice of Mr. Lashley for the working class of Barbados, advocating, representing, agitating for both the disabled, workers, and all those who need representation in Barbados. I know we have a question for the President from the media, so we will go with that right now.
Hello, evening. I'm Carlos Atwell from the Nation newspaper. Right. Okay. I'm Carlos Atwell. Okay. My question is, I want to find out if Barbados, in your opinion, could Barbados have survived and thrived without going to the IMF? Seeing how the bees would have said, the bees brought...
You need to make up, Carlos.
I can hear me, I don't understand. Is it working?
Yeah, on.
What I want to find out is, in your opinion, could Barbados have survived and thrived without going to the IMF? The people who said that they did everything but was and feet. So what could have been done instead?
Hey, thank you very much, Carlos, for that very important, interesting question. Now, to answer that, just let me give you a little bit of context. Now, there are obvious choices on the flip side. You either go to the IMF, which is international borrowing, so then you are under international agreements and you have to deal with the interest rates that you're paying back in foreign exchange, or you try to navigate the local debt markets and you borrow locally, which means that you have more room and flexibility to maneuver. So the IMF is not always a choice. Often this government has presented as if they didn't have a choice but to go to the IMF. They had a choice. They could have continued to work and cooperate with the local debt market. In fact, going to the IMF, and I'm glad you asked this question, because going to the IMF destroyed the local debt market and the local bond market, because by wiping out the NIS and wiping out the savings of those who had invested in government bonds over the years, you lost trust in that market. Now the government realized the mistake of their policy and they're trying to tap back to the local debt market. You would recognize that it's not working. So the last of the bonds that they issued, they were bragging about how one bank took a big chunk of them, and then they were trying to come back to get people to take the bonds. But really, there wasn't a large appetite for government paper anymore because of what they did. So really, there are always choices about how you go about handling your debt and handling your borrowing and managing your economy. The reality is, and this is something the government did, so again, I'm really glad you asked this question, because they bastardized debt. They made borrowing a bad thing. The DLP borrowing, good debt. And now they found themselves in the same, or a worse situation, and now they're trying to pull back. The reality is, governments have to borrow. Governments will borrow. That's just, it is not necessarily something about the borrowing, it is what you do with the borrowing and how do you put that money into productive capacity. So the question that we always ask in these meetings, where the money gone, is a fair one, because you borrow millions and millions and millions, but where the schools that get billed for it? No schools. Where the houses that get billed? No houses. Roads basically now getting paved in a rush program, mill and pave. Where the money for the infrastructure? Where the Hyatt Hotel? Where the other hotels that were supposed to be built? Where are all the big capital work projects? So the government has borrowed billions. In fact, I think it's calculated that after the debt restructuring, they end up putting the debt back up by another $2 billion. So they end up restructuring the debt, wiping out everybody's savings to bring us back to another $2 billion of debt. What was the point in all of that? So what I want you to take away, likely, from this is that there are always choices. Do not let anybody ever fool you that that was the only choice. There were other choices. Experts warned them about the debt restructuring. They warned them about the IMF. And look at this, Carlos. Think about this. Who was recently complaining about rating agencies giving the Caribbean and giving Barbados bad ratings? Somebody can make a guess? Yes. Mayor Motley, you could believe that Mayor Motley got at an IDB meeting in some in Colombia or Chile, wherever she was flying about, and complain that rating agencies are wicked and they do bad things and the ratings that they give small countries are unfair and the methodologies are wrong. When the Democratic Labour Party and some of the academics at UE, including Professor Don Marshall, who was leading that fight to say the methodology of rating agencies are wrong. They're not suited for the Caribbean. They're unfair. What did Barbados Labour Party government again say? 10 downgrades, yeah, all over the up and down, marching about these downgrades. And now this same Prime Minister is trying to look us straight in the eye to tell us that any downgrade that Barbados gets now, we should ignore it. We should disqualify it because the same rating agencies that she tried to use to win a government, all of a sudden, they're now wicked, they're now bad, the methodologies are wrong. When they were warned that these rating agencies, the methodologies and things were wrong. So it's all choices. We had a choice to make at that particular juncture. The government chose the IMF. They chose a debt restructuring program. And I want you to remember this, that restructured all of the debt of Barbados. Do not be fooled that somehow the government pick and choose and restructure DLP debt. The government was restructuring debt that Owen Arthur incurred under his government. Some of the same World Cup debt and the prison debt and the police station debt, Greenland debt, all of that was in the mix, you know. So when they present the debt restructuring as if it was some, or we only restructure the debt that the DLP do and no, it was a debt restructuring exercise for all of the debt of Barbados. So you know what they were doing? They were trying to wipe their own record clean on the backs of the Democratic Labour Party and the people of this country. And we will not have any of it. Because that is it. So, you know, people need to appreciate what happened during that debt restructuring process. I think everybody was giddy after the first 30-0. Everybody was caught up in it. And it just happened. And it's only now on reflection, everybody went, wait, what did the government do in 2018? Because we are now feeling all of the effects of that particular decision, those particular set of choices advised by people who have false professorships and who are not real professors, by other people who are not qualified to advise them. They decided that these were programs to enter into. And it is not right that you, the taxpayers of this country, now, 6 years later, have to pay this price. And yet, we have not a word from the government about how they're going to repay the national insurance money that they took from your pockets, how they're going to repay the money that they took from the University of the West Indies, how they're going to repay the money that they took from you when you trusted the government of this country to invest in government bonds, take out your little money because you know you just get returns, the money you had for your grandchildren, put them in government paper, and now you lost out. That is not right, and that cannot be a caring government.
True. That's right. You answer that question?
Well answered. Well answered, President. I think he got more than one story there just now. More than what he was looking for. He got a different story than what he was looking for. He got more than what he was looking for, so we make sure he write the right story come tomorrow. Anyone have any questions or any suggestions? We have a whole mic here that look real lonely. He's standing up all night. So anyone has any questions for the panel?
Good night. Good night.
Yeah, he's good night to the panel, good night to the audience, good night to the recording family, and the wider public in the extension. I am here tonight to give some suggestions to the Democratic Labour Party on a return to office. And the first one is, I am a victim of the land tax, the high land tax bill in Barbados. The lead tax bill spoke about it, and spoke about state residents. I am one. My land tax bill made from
1,200 to 4,500. By open up, went from 800 to 1,800.
Wait, 1,200 to what?
500 and 800 to 1,800.
Then I inquired about it. A judge, and he said, this means he will go to the office and he will seek some clarity on it. His self-study came back to me with a list of names. I tell they will have to call one of these persons and get an independent lawyer. Sir, I am telling you this today on the return of the Democratic Labour Party to abolish land taxes.
Yes!
And replace it by a homeowner tax. And within that homeowner tax, every household in Barbados will pay $500. Sir, play you the calculation, you will get your revenue. The hotels, the businesses, you will work out the scheme and then with 3,000 or 4,000, whatever. Those who live in government units, they're paying rent already, you will give them a lesser payment, whether it be 200 or 250. Sir, again, you will get your revenue and you will not have to write off no taxes for nobody because you will put mechanism in place that this money will be collected on a return to the Democratic Labour Party government. Next question. Morals is declining in Barbados defense system. What the Democratic Labour Party needs to do on the return to office, reintroduce religious education in school. Children must be children, and they must be well groomed. We must do children go to school and Barbados look like mothers and fathers. We can't have that. Next, this one is for last year. That's this one is for you, sir. We have 11 parishes in Barbados, still Republican promising on every parish in this country have at least 2 blocks. We have to find ways to get the young people back into society. Sir, my recommendation for the Democratic Labour Party again, and let me finish speaking on this one last week on Voices of Opinion. On the return to office for the Democratic Labour Party, sir, those persons who we call it theft, assault, a little misdemeanor crime, instead of you going back to the system to apply for expulsion, sir, I want the Democratic Labour Party to make it compulsory that those charges will be automatic expulsion, sir.
She's suggesting that it should be automatic instead of you have to apply.
And that will help bring the young people off the blocks and back into society because there's a lot of young people on the blocks with degrees, diplomas, and such forth, but the system is failing them miserably. We heard of brass tacks last week, where the exchange between Corey Lane and Istanbul. And what made me a little perturbed with Corey Lane, when he said to Iceland that there's certain names that cannot go on certain registers. But if you know that money that you can't engage the man in the first place for, it was wrong. And that was very insulting to Mr. Iceland, sir. I thank you, Mr. Lashley.
All right, let me answer the first one. All right, you see, let me, I can answer one and I can pass the other along as a good leader, because you can't do everything. But let me answer the one about the land tax. Now, and I've had a lot of questions on this from members and non-members, homeowner tax, whatever you call it by, there's still a tax. Now, let us just understand the reason for land tax. And land tax facilitates not only your property rights, but that money is used for social services, that money is used for other things. The problem is not necessarily the tax within of itself, but it is the rates of the tax and the increases exponentially that have not been explained. And the other problem is that we do not know what is happening with the money collected from the land tax. So the same way, for example, we don't know what happens to the money collected from the health levy. So there's a health levy that pays directly for health, but nobody can give you an itemized use of that money. What I would suggest, and even Dale, your homeowner's tax is still a tax. So you just moved it and you call it something different. You moved it, you standardized it, you said $500 for this, but it's still a tax. What I would suggest is that return to government, we will create fair bands of land tax, because that's the key there. We would make sure that there are fair bands and that your land tax can jump from $1,200 to $4,500 and from $800 to $1,800. So we would take off the recent increases that this government introduced, and then we would look at ensuring that the use of the tax is clear, that you know exactly what your land tax is done. So those are the two things. We will look at taking off these increases, because these can't be fair, and in taking off the increases, we would create a fair system of tax, because I think that's what you're trying to do with the $500, because you're trying to create a blanket tax, $500 for everybody. If you're in a government unit, no tax. Those are things that can be looked at for standardization of certain units, and then we would make sure that it is clear what the tax is being spent on. So I think we're on the same page. Whether you call it homeowners tax or land tax or whatever, it is still a tax that is being applied to your property. So I think that's the direction that we can go in. In terms of the religious education, I would leave that to my goodly Shadow Minister of Education. And in terms of the automatic expulsion, I will leave that to our goodly Minister of, I call you a minister already, it almost slipped out. I will leave that to our Shadow, our Shadow AG to deal with those particular issues. Because as you can see, that's how we work in the Democratic Labour Party. We are a team. I don't have to answer everything. Their competency is here to do that.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, our comrade, for this important question in terms of religion and religious studies in schools. I believe that everyone in here understands that every school in Barbados prays on the morning. They pray on the morning, they pray during break time, they pray lunchtime, they pray for their sports, and all of these things. I think religion has its place in developing the characters of our young persons. It's important, and we can't deny that. I think if everybody understands the role of education and as well as the role of religion, it's very important. Religious studies is important, just as important as civic responsibility. We have to teach our student what it is to be a good citizen within society. So that even if you're a moral or ethical or religious person, you understand that you have a duty to your country to ensure that you serve your country to your greatest capacity. These are things that we have to continuously teach our young persons, especially our youth, our young males and our young females as well, our young women and men within the school system. Because as I said before, education does not have to do only with academics. It also has to do with dealing with or building that character of the individual. Because we can have someone who's very pious, very religious, but the person may not necessarily understand what it is to work on a team or what it is to be a good citizen within this country. So I think it's very important that we understand that some of the things that the Democratic Labour Party would wish and we will implement is to increase guidance counselors in schools. It is very important because some of those students, they need psychological intervention. So how much you want to teach religion, some of those students need behavioral intervention. They need that. We speak of violence, but we also need to remember that some of those students experience violence at home. So let us not remove ourselves from that, because if we're going to teach them about religion in church, at school, we need to teach religion at home as well, so that perhaps the foundations can be there. So some of the things that we need to do is that when the Barbados Labour Party come in, and I'll just get a little political, when they did come in 2018, one of the first things that Minister of Education said, which now works in transport or something of that nature, one of the things that they said that they would have done was to increase guidance counselors in school, because there was an increase of violence within schools. Have we seen that? No. Have we seen any of those schools implementing such programs for our students? So these are some of the concerns that we have, and I think it is important that we are advocates for our youth as well. And I would like to applaud Tyra for the work that she's been doing in advocating and championing for the rights of students, for the rights of young persons, because children's rights are fundamental rights. And we're seeing ministers of education that continuously violate the rights of children. And I want us continuously to remember that. Because we're talking about violence in schools, but that was the same Minister of Education that condoned what happened at the Springer Memorial School. Having those people go and terrorize those students by using forms of violence within those schools. So I want us to remember that even the police had recently told us that there is an increase in domestic violence at home. And we do not recognize the effect that it has on children. Those children learn those types of behavior. Violence is a learned behavior. And the research will show you that. Because children are seeing this is how they should resolve their problems, through violence, by hitting, kicking, stabbing. We have to rehabilitate our youth and show them the ways, show them the good Christian values, if you want to say that as well. Show them how you can learn to coexist with your colleagues in classrooms, with your teachers. So it's very important that we look at civic responsibility and championing the cause or advocating the cause for our students, and enforcing that these ministers of education recognize that those students cannot be easily dismissed, because that's what they're doing. They're dismissing the voices of the youth. Yes, we understand that the students may act in a way that is antisocial, but there are solutions. There is research to show you how you intervene. And I want us to be very clear. They've had programs in the schools, and some of those programs are tied very closely to the Barbados Labour Party. And so we do not get what the output would be. If you're spending millions of dollars on various programs, can you show us what has been the outcome? Because what we're seeing is violence is increasing, and something else that we need to recognize, there's also an increase in high school dropouts. And so there's a bigger problem. The school is not safe. Students, there's an element of fear, because all of us are here in a classroom, and you could imagine if any form of violence happened here, it will trigger a traumatic experience for some of us. And we have to recognize that. And one of the things that I see these ministers of education are doing, they do not take the mental health of students and children and teachers seriously. Something happens and immediately they do not try to see what kinds of intervention. Do those students need counseling? They allow the students to return back to the same environment, not recognizing they are human beings. They have traumatic experiences, and they will need their minds and their altitudes to function in those environments. So yes, sir, as a Christian myself, I do agree with you. I do agree that our children need to be guided, but we cannot dismiss them. We have to help them. We have to show them other ways. But it also means that we have a responsibility within our society to recognize our behaviors. We see adults in Bridgetown fighting and doing all kinds of stuff, yet still we expect our children to do better in the school environment. We have to be the role models that we expect from our children. We have to be those role models. So I thank you, and I'm the Democratic Labour Party. When we get in power, when we get to run the governments of this country, our children will be first and foremost. I can guarantee you that.
Expunge.
Oh, sorry. All right. Yes. Well, there's currently a regime in Barbados under the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, in that you can apply, there's a procedure, and to have your record expunged. My problem with it is the process and the procedure of it, and the length of time that you have to go through to get your record expunged. And so I support it. I mean, with respect to minor offenses, the more serious offenses, of course, you have to walk very carefully on that. What I would support, though, is that, you see, my exposure to young people who come in contact with the criminal justice system, there is a regime, the Penal System Reform Act as amended. Under that act, you have, when you're sentencing someone, you have to get a report. We call it a pre-sentence report. So that goes in now to the background of the offender. Many times we get those reports. Rashi could tell you, Saracen could tell you, Terry could tell you, and I think my learned friend had a slight contact with the criminal law. She's a civil lawyer. She deal with the law that make the money. Whereas we deal with poor people, right? But let me say this, not saying that she don't deal with poor people. Let me say this though, that you read the reports, and there's a common thread. One, poor family background. Secondly, at school, they're running into trouble from an early age. Then you see contact with drugs, smoking marijuana, whatever. And then you see leaving school without certification. And then you see sometimes the father was in contact with the criminal system at an early age. Then the family break down. There's no father, there's no model, no father figure, no model, family model really to carry them through life and make them a good citizen. The approach that I think that we need to take is that we need to look at the root causes of why these people are behaving in antisocial behavior from an early age, and what mechanisms being put in place to stem and to stop some of these people who are some potential. When you speak to them, you can see the potential. They just need the guidance and the right environment. Some are first-time offenders, and they always say that there must come a time in Barbados that we build a center to rehabilitate these offenders, to reform them, and to take them through the paces and make sure that you staff it with all the different social agencies that, that can supervise them and guide them through the system. Only yesterday I got a call about a fellow with so much promise. It was someone I got a call from the prison. And they cannot believe that person is in prison with the amount of talent that person, I mean, he's in the entertainment arena. And I got very concerned because I know once he gets in the right environment with so much talent, he can make an impact on the entertainment industry in Barbados in a positive way. And let me say this. Young people are saying, we do not have access to the government resources, but you have a bureaucratic system. So how we can deal with this bureaucracy? And that is why, getting a little political, that is why Minister Blackett started the constituency councils, so that resources could get to them, these young people, the projects that they wanted to start, ideas that they have, that instead of going through the government bureaucracy, you have a minister who had a vision like Steve Blackett, and a government that had a vision, that started the Constituency Council in the first phase, and then I'm certain that Minister Blackett was thinking that he's going to take it to the next stage. The next stage would have been really to empowering people. Empowering people, and these young men need empowerment. They need role models. We need to take, you know, we have plants sitting down. We have many of these pavilions. Just during the day, and we spending money on them, we putting fencing around them. But we are not putting programs in them and have some sort of output that would now benefit these young people. I asked Charles Griffith, give me some programs, give me some projects to put in these community centers that can really, you know, bring these people into something meaningful. Yes, I understand there's a peace program. I understand that. Or a peace program. I understand that. I understand the concept behind it, no? I understand the concept behind it. But the question is, what about those people who are on the brink of coming into contact with the criminal justice system? What are we going to do with them? Shouldn't some of that money go towards them too, to redirect them away from the criminal justice system? If you're speaking about the juvenile justice system too, and justice reform in Barbados, the aim and the policy behind it should be to make sure that these people do not come in contact with the criminal justice system, or even if they come in contact, make sure it is minimal. Make sure that it's minimal. Make sure that we have, but by this time, I don't understand, we cannot find money to find an old school, to find a piece of land owned by Ministry of Housing and construct a center, a reform center, modern day reform center for these first-time offenders, so that they will not come in contact with hardened criminals at the prison. That's my position.
Yeah. No, just to touch specifically on the expungement of convictions, yeah? No, you just have to exercise some caution in that there may be some more serious convictions that may need to stay on a person's card, right? And the current system in place is basically you would get the form from the Attorney General's office, you'll put in the application, you would get some references, you'll put in some ping pongs, and you would wait 6 months before this is expunged. Whereas the person that is normally the person who is applying for the expungement is somebody who's really applying for a job and they want a clean police certificate of character, and they would really like that before they go into the interview. And when you hear that, when you put in your application for an expungement, you have to wait 6 months. So I agree with Mike that you have to look at the way in which they are issued, the length of time, case by case. But the current system in place right now, we think is good, that there's a rehabilitation board that actually looked at any reasoning why you should have this conviction vacated from your record. But you got to be very careful, because you don't want people running around, you know, use of firearm and burglaries on the conviction, and rape on the conviction card just to have it expunged in 5 years, yeah? And to touch on, what was the next one, land tax. Now, You see, you have to put it in context and look at perspective. I know you spoke about a home tax, right? But owning a home should be an incentive for a young person, so to speak. So I want to feel comfortable going to the bank and borrowing $200,000 or $300,000 only to, when my house finishes next year, I got to pay $500 in tax. I don't think that will be fair for an aspiring young generation who would like to own their own home. Now, it's not only land tax, because to carry the document to the land registry, you have to pay the land taxes. When you get to the land registry now, you have to pay a 2.5% property transfer tax. And then you got to pay stamp duty, which is $10 per every 1,000. So it's tax on top of tax on top of tax. Now, I agree with the president that he said when we come into power, he would look at a more fair bans. And he's not just talking for the people, he's talking for the shadow ministers as well, because we hope to own property sometime in the future. So probably one of the houses, but we establishing a fair ban, a tax, will be far better than just more equitable than just a broad, just applying a brush for one cap fits all. And it would be good to at least do a feasibility study, because on the other hand, land taxes brings in a good, it's a very lucrative tax for the government, right? And it could fill in a revenue shortfall.
Thanks so much, Rashi.
That's rude. All right, speak. Of course.
For my recollection, right? If you tax every household $500 per household per year, right? That is far way less than paying a tax.
Well, you gotta remember. We discussing, but just let me enlighten you to just a couple things. If your house value $150,000 or $50,000, well, not yours really, but $150,000 or less, you do not attract any taxes, right? So if you want tenantry land, so to speak, or $3 million, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know you, sir, but it sounds like you have a very expensive place to live in, right? right. But basically what I'm saying, that if it's $100,000 or $50,000 or less, you don't attract the tax. So you can't generalize all the homeowners, because not all the homeowners will be paying out $500.
I think I would just take an interjection. You have a question? Go ahead.
All right.
Finish it. But your point,
Yeah.
and this is my position, right? Regardless of the valuation of your house, sir, right? Whether big or small, you build what you want it, right? You don't look at people what other people have. $500 across the board, and you don't have to write off no debt for no money. You understand? And you put mechanism in place that the money will be collected and everything will be already balance sheet will be there. Right? But we can't sit down here and looking for solutions and then come back and say, okay, well, my tax rose from $1,200 to $4,500 this year. You know what next year my tax will be? $10,000?
Okay.
When you say that you write it off for the privilege, you got write it off on the privilege, sure.
This is a very, what's the word I'm looking for? A very sensitive issue when it comes to land tax. So I want you to, you can write this down and you could say that I said it, but this is the commitment that I think that is a sensible, feasible commitment that can be made. Remember what I said here tonight, reform and things are not going to be easy, but we have to do this as a united country. I do not think that we can simply remove all land taxes in that way However, there is a way to make what is happening to you not happen, because what is happening to you is unfair. There is no way that your tax bill has literally what? I don't know what that is. That's double, triple, quadruple in that particular way. That is not right. You cannot move from basically $1,000 to about $5,000 overnight. And then I just said, what will happen next year and the year after? And then you said, there's an open lot, and that's now gone from $8,000 to almost $2,000. You know, that is not right. So let's establish that first point. It's not right. Then what we can do, you look into the feasibility and you look how can we make taxes fair and create bands that allow different people to pay less taxes for their property and allow you to also pay less taxes. And I think that's the best way, because we have to balance the fact that land taxes support social services and other aspects. So if you remove the land tax completely, then we have to think, how do we pay for the other social services that we want? It all has to be a kind of very delicate dance in terms of your tax reduction and then also looking to productive sectors. So while we're adjusting the land tax, how do we grow, for example, renewable energy sector to make money, or the offshore education sector, which this party had started to make money? So we have to think about all of these things because it has to move together. You don't want to end up being like the Barbados Labour Party government that just taxing people out of oblivion, but there's no productive capacity on the other side to get projects and capital works and infrastructure going to generate revenue. So we can't make the same mistakes that they're making and walk into the same traps. I hope that helps you.
That helps you, Dale?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think we have another question from the floor. Thank you so much, Mr. President, and all those who answered Dale.
Break. You
can take it up. Yeah, there you go.
I want to know if...
Slide it up.
Just begin to it.
I want to know if there is consideration for the sewage tax for those persons who are not attached to sewage. That's number one. Number two, this is not a question so much as it is perhaps a point of discussion. I am a nurse and have been for a long time. However, I am wondering if any consideration could be given to having a nurses commission, so that a lot of the issues that come into health that affect nurses and then affect the populace could be considered. And one of the things that I think is major, if you check, you will find that a new registered nurse, because everybody is not a nurse, the law prescribes who is a nurse, but in Barbados, everybody that wears whatever the scrubs are become a nurse. However, when we start to understand the difference, a new registered nurse gets paid less than a nursing assistant, even though that new registered nurse is responsible from day one once she or he enters the nursing arena. So those are things I would like to consider.
Okay, that's a fair question. In terms of the nurses commission to look at the issues facing nurses, I think that's actually a really great idea, and that's something that we can do to look into nurse shortages, providing better conditions for nurses, and empowering our frontline workers in terms of the nurses. It's one thing to clap during COVID, but it's another thing to provide the resources to empower them and to help build up the profession. And really, I think that is I really like that idea, and I promise I'm going to follow up with you to flesh it out and understand how we can build it out. But I really like the idea of the Nurses Commission. In terms of the sewage tax removal, that is something that we would have to sit as a broader parliamentary group to consider. I am not going to commit to things that I think that require big consideration on those levels. And when the parliamentary caucus meets with everybody, those are discussions that we can have before making such public pronouncements. But to say that it will be under consideration and we can look at it. But on the Nurses Commission, definitely A-OK on that one. That's a good one. Any other questions? Why don't you ask? You don't want to
Yes,
first thing you commend you said this was about the moon and you did a wonderful job. Some observations Michael. The first thing we're going to do is to let the people in this country know that any piece of legislation this party will bring will be done properly. That's the first thing we have to tell the people in this country that legislation must be done, the law must be done properly. Everything that's not sent back now, the law is the ownership of the act or the bill. It belongs to the Attorney General. Okay, so everything that goes back to the Attorney General. That's what I'm saying? So that's the first thing we can do. You can make it right. Yes. You can make it right. But I just want to go on to something there. Yeah, wrong. Mr. President, some things that we need to do separate. The first thing we have to do is to look at the services in this country.
The who?
The first thing we look at the people who work in these public services. You must start this contract work. Michael mentioned decent work. This country, this government is on record introducing training work and the ILO has asked the same for the last almost 25 years. We cannot continue to allow people to work under conditions where there are no benefits to them. That is backward. And this is the government that says they care about you. I heard this afternoon on the calling program, people complaining that they can't go to the airport at night. Precarious work is not something that we should be proud of. Every country across the world, unless you enter child labor or something like that, I'm trying its best to move away from that. But we did it with our workers, we did it with COVID workers, and let me tell you, we still got people working in the public service on those bad limited contracts. But that's another commitment we're going to make, Madam President. We're going to make it right. There's a lot of things we want to do right. Before we even start to inquire on how we can set this thing, we're going to clean up a lot of mess that these people have done, all the hardships that they have placed Barbados under. We cannot, my sister Karina, we cannot have people going to the hospital and spending 2 weeks and 3 days in any. That's the problem. This is health of this country we're talking about. This is health of this country we're talking about. How can you do that? And how can you go into the well of Parliament? That's another thing to it. That's another thing. When we were in this government, no public services and a blast of life. No public servant has ever gone up there and asked people to vote for them. They don't create policy. Exactly. It is not for them to be answering those questions. That is the minister's job. That is the minister's job. And then you place public servants in a precarious position because some of them will really let you tell the truth. But they can't. What they have to do is to move the bit. You know what I'm saying? So this is the thing we need to clean up. We need to clean up We warn them. Hospital is not a family business. In a family business, we have a chairman and the chief executive officer. It's the same body. Hospital is a publicly owned company. We can call it company or ministry, whatever you want, department, whatever you want to call it. It's publicly owned. And so you cannot have a situation, it's a duality situation, where all that power is being concentrated in one person.
Yes.
And that is where the madness started. The madness started from there. Because who are you going to report to? You are giving Caesar, you're not giving Caesar what's due to Caesar. You understand? Because you Caesar. You're the law, the executioner, everything in one. Right? Everything in one. They don't blame me on anything. Because she didn't invent the title. That was a piece of madness by this prime minister that we got. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So we start from there. So when we warn them and say this is foolishness, it comes back in the parliament last week and trying to browbeat this thing and help them to feel that, oh, well, you know, it was an exercise that we tried and after careful, you left at it. We think we need to reverse it. Foolishness. You want to inflict so much pain on people in 2 years and money. We can't allow them to get rid of that either. Okay? But we need to put the hospital right. The health of this nation is too important. It is too important for people to be playing capitalists.
That's right.
And I can speak here because you can just say, I have a very good friend. Someone right here might know. When this thing of the radiation machine wasn't working, then calls me. He said, it's my investigation now, right? So I'm following what happened. And the man looks at me and said, boy, I was in Trinidad just before Christmas. Getting radiation treatment. Let me explain something already. There are not many people in Barbados who have insurance. Let me explain. Going back? I'm sorry. No? Yeah. There are not many people in Barbados who can afford health insurance. There are less than 4% of the people in this country has health insurance. If he did not have that in, he would still be in Barbados waiting. Well, the grave too, but like but these are the realities that we are faced with here. And so when you see people in the parliament parading, right? Because what we saw over the last couple of days was a production, a carefully planned production, where questions were asked because these are things that they've talked about. So you would get them and say, Minister of Housing,
We wish it was housing.
Something else. It's carefully go around because real questions were not being asked. And then they be asking we saw awards that are approaching for policy. Okay, realize that these people call for policy. This was the essence thing. You heard anybody talk money? How the money being spent? No. You got to correct that too, Mr. President. You need to correct that as well. When we spend the taxpayers in this country, when we use money, they must know exactly where it is going. And that is what we have to do and know where the money is going. So those are the smaller areas. So when we come to the scope that we have people going before the service finish. In front the employment rights tribunal as well. 6 and 7 years, and the case not being heard. You lost your pick. You got a house. You can't pay your rent. You can't get the mortgage control before they work the way, right? And you haven't. We put that in place. You put all those things in place, and we do the employment rights and the tribunal as well. Along the established payments and the tribunals as well. But here it is.
Justice delayed, justice delayed.
Exactly. We need to put that right. We need to have people working in those areas. The tribunals are 3. You have one person working street tribunals, raising staffing, all the fancy foolish talk. Where is the staff to help to run those tribunals? People are suffering because of that. Okay? And I can tell you this, we all may not know this. You remember when they had COVID? Remember the workers that was up and down with no help from the unions as well? You know, started making the 7% either. You don't know that? Wow. Yeah? Started making the 7% either. So all of these are things that we have to commit to people in this country. We want to make those things work. It's called for big way of money. It's called for making systems work. For the people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So,
I think Michael has one intervention he wants to make.
Thank you, Walter. I had raised the issue of contract workers in the public service just briefly. And the government is not getting it right because in some instances, they're actually sorting out their hours of work. They're giving them tools. So to me, that has the intention of treating the relationship as an employer-employee relationship. So really and truly, we get a lot of blurred situations with respect to whether the person is a contract worker or whether it's an independent contractor or whether it's an employee. Secondly, my issue with contract employment is that the person who got the contract is really beholden to the person who given the contract, and the question of independence and even professional independence is called into question because you are beholden to the person who gave you that contract, and of course they're paying your wages. And I have an issue with it too, even with respect to a number of institutions in Barbados. I don't want to call them now because I have to appear before them sometimes. But let me say this, that there is a case from the OECS that the principle coming out of it is that a contract worker is more likely to be biased towards the person who gave him the job rather than a person who deemed as impartial. So I think that is, to me, the dangers of this employment contracts. I think, and I believe that the Democratic Labour Party should really move away from that concept, but introduce other pieces of legislation that will protect the fundamental rights of workers in the workplace.
You can go ahead.
Chair, this is very prepared to do. So I want to add my bit on this. One of the most egregious things we have happening in Barbados, not now, I must admit, very much in trade union business, I'm sure our water will know it, is the fact that workers in this country do not get paid, some category of workers do not get paid, sometimes for as long as 6 months. It is the most disgusting issue that persons face, not from time to time, on a regular basis, where temporary workers are not paid, and the word is their party did not send down the document. I want that to be one priority, that this government looks, when we become the government, that we look at to ensure that as we're talking about decent work, that is part of the decent work situation. Real persons get paid on a monthly basis as they should. If you work and produce, you should get paid. So to add to your laundry list is the fact that workers need to be paid when they produce. It's very important. And the second issue, Mr. Chairman, the second and final report, is that when Michael spoke about the peace program a while ago, he called it a peace program. And in truth, in fact, it is a piece of program. This program is geared towards, quote unquote, making the Prime Minister look good. That is all there is to it, making the Prime Minister look good. It has serious problems where the persons who are participating in this program are certainly unable to, let's say, understand, because they are toddlers in some regards. Toddlers, the word is used, who come to this program just to make up numbers for persons. Recently we saw that there was a major issue with the persons who are managing the program. I want the Democratic Labour Party now, not wait until X time, now to look into the peace program, to see how it is managed, who are the persons benefiting from it, and where, but again, where the money is going towards financing the peace program, and most importantly, to ensure that if you're going to rehabilitate people in this country, children and teenagers and whomever, that there's a serious program of rehabilitation, not a makeshift program just to make the Prime Minister look good. So that is something we can start to do some research on right now.
All right. Thank you for those responses. In terms of the looking into the peace program, that is something that I think Comrade Michael would be able to undertake. We can definitely commit to the Center for Reform for First-Time Offenders. I think that is a brilliant idea, and one that this party should definitely run with. In terms of the suggestion about contract work, that is something we definitely have to deal with, because it came up today where people, if they don't have permanent employment, they cannot have the loans and the basic things to make their life better. And we can definitely say there will be no more civil servants in the well. So we definitely commit to that, to removal of that one. Now, and the bugbear in terms of workers not being paid, and this is something that we've all experienced in starting in the civil. I don't know why and how in 2024, when I started as a civil servant back in the day, it took them about a month, I think, or more to pay me, and apparently the authority, and apparently that was a quick one, because some people can wait up to 6 months of payment, and it's something that we will commit to sorting out as a government, because there's no way that is right, that you're waiting 6 months to be paid. So thank you very much for those concerns.
Okay, we have one more question I'm seeing at the mic now, so yes. we'll take that question, and then we have a short presentation as well, and we will thank everyone. So go ahead, sir.
Good evening to everybody. My name is Alvin Topping. I wear a lot of hats, so let me say good evening to the Shadow Cabinet, good evening to the members of St. James North, good evening to my good friends in St. Lucie. Now, I know you said one question, but it was then a couple of thoughts marinate when the question and answer segment was going on. So, I'm hearing a lot of talk about the youth. I have a daughter, so I respect the youth. But I want to start by talking about the elderly. And it was under our government that we removed the tax incentives for things like retirement plans, correct? So I want to know, don't look so puzzled, Mr. President, because that's a fact. So I want to know, what is the prospective Democratic Labour Party's administration's policy with respect to kind of like Social Security in the US, where they really take no real responsibility for a person's financial future. They provide a little Medicare, but then outside of that, they incentivize citizens to put things in place and plan their financial futures, particularly for retirement. I want to know what is the DLP's perspective on that, so that the elderly don't have to generally sit down and rely on $243 a week for a non-contributory pension. That's one.
All right, I think we will. You ask all one time? Okay, go ahead. We'll thank you for, yeah.
Number two, I am no longer as young as I used to be, but I've been following politics since 1981. And in my estimation, no government in this country has ever rolled out what I would call a sports or arts or cultural developmental program for the youth. And in my estimation, I think that those are areas where we can develop our young people. Friday, we were in St. Lucie. I'm also the director of sports for a charity called Trinidad Charity. And we would have had the opportunity to work with a project called Under the Umbrella, where we put on a pre-knapsack week for all the primary schools in St. Lucie at North Star. So I want to say kudos to St. Lucie for that. I want to give Fiona Griffith and Mr. Wallace some applause, because to me, those are the types of programs we need. We don't need people putting up fences around community playing fields and putting up bleachers and talking about mini stadia. That is a waste of time, it is a waste of resources, in my opinion. So I also want to know, what do we plan to do with respect to like a national sports, culture, or arts developmental program? I also want to talk a little bit about education, because I come to this school twice a day, 5 days a week. Madam teaches here. I want to go back to Dale's point about how the school children are going to school. I do not know for the life of me who would have approved that policy. I firmly believe the way you wear a uniform, it means that we want you to wear a uniform because you have to have discipline. But you say you wear a uniform, but come school, you're here as you like. And I've seen it filtering to workplaces, because up to yesterday, my charity, we also had a job rally. And as I drove in, I said to the madam, look at how these young people come looking for work, how they dress. And that is a direct spill off of how they're going to school. So, my question would be, is that a policy that we are going to allow? Should we return to government? Or do we want to go back to well-groomed, well-mannered, well-behaved school children? So those will be my 3 questions.
Very much for those questions. In terms of the tax incentives for the pensions, it's actually that was actually raised recently. I think last week by some pension funds in Barbados, and it's something that we will commit to looking at, because we also have to look at the double taxation that happens on pensions. So that is something that we have to consider seriously, because we have to get more people to have private pension plans, because the reality is the small government pension is not enough. So that's an easy one, that's a no-brainer. In terms of the sports programs, I think you're definitely incorrect about that, because Tyra just showed the 123-page document with all the 35 pages. No, there is. So I would allow the shadow youth minister to deal with that. In terms of the hair, I'm going to let the education shadow secretary deal with that. But I get things, and I think Minister Education, how that line you talk about behavioral management, which is different to how you carry your hair. You can have plaits, you can have twists. That doesn't mean that you're a criminal or you're a bad game. And we have, you're not that rude. You have to be very, very, very careful, I think, about that as a line. They said there are legal cases on this. There are ways to wear your hair. I am very sensitive to this, given my own son and his mixed race, and how his hair may be perceived and what is well groomed or not well groomed. So I don't walk that line in terms of grooming here with behavior. But I was at Ms. Dijon handling its entirety, giving her lovely hairstyle.
So let me clear. I was not trying to talk about black hair. And I'm not talking about whether your hair can make you criminalized or not. I'm talking about deportment that I see in young children going to school.
So I just wonder,
And it spills from into the workplace.
can I answer your question? I like your hair, by the way. Well, I thought, like, I want to answer your question, and as the President said, there is quite a number of concerns about that. And let's take it back. A few years ago when we had some Ross Superior students who were not allowed to go to school because they were homeschooled. And then we heard a conversation about those same group of persons not being allowed in school if their hairs were not covered. Sir, as an educator, I think let's just, and I can't see, I want to see you. So when we speak, I can see you all. I can see you and you can see me, and our souls does not have hair, it does not have color, and it does not have gender. Because the reality is, when a child comes to school, and that is from my perspective, and what we tend to do is to automatically, because we're human beings, we automatically, and I understand what you mean by being well groomed and having to carry a particular department. I believe that once a student is respectful, once a student is disciplined, and once a student understands their role as a student, because that's something we have to teach. Not many students know that being a student is a responsibility as a citizen. That's what you have to do. You have to go to school and do what is required of you. But also what we're seeing is that we have 10, and I understand where you're coming from, particularly young men. And you're saying that you're seeing a gradual input into the workspace. Well, that's a good thing. If they're going to work, that means it's good. They haven't done anything wrong. That means they're entering the work field. But what I'd like to say is that our minds are far more important than our physical appearance. And I have seen students being turned away because they don't have the right socks, they don't have the right shoes, the skirt may be a little too short or over the knees, and perhaps the hair. And it's usually the young men they target and not the women, or not the young girls. Why? Because they seem to have a prejudice towards our black males. And what happens indirectly, when we think about it in terms of high school dropouts, look at the demographics, and you will understand why this is happening. For me as an educator, I see all kinds of students. And if I have to be honest, I say sometimes, you're not cold in that AC with that outfit, but it's not about that. I believe that every child should have the opportunity to be educated. And to deny a child the right to access to education because of how they hair look, how they fit look, if they look into a tiny, and you don't understand, some of those kids are coming to school, they may not look the right way, they may be hungry, they may have a hard day, but they come to school. And our responsibility as educators is to ensure that that child not only gets educated, but that child stays in school. So sir, if you see it happening, if you see a young man hair out and they're not carrying, it's your responsibility to say, young man, I don't like how, but it's not about his hair, not about his shirt. If you feel it's a little bit vague, it's your responsibility to tell him, well, that don't look good, that don't look right. But we can't deny any child. It's their legal and moral and constitutional right.
I never said we have to deny them.
No, because when...
No.
Because once we start with the policy, it is a policy that means
There are certain schools that may deny a child access because of how they hair look.
So let me ask you a question. When they went to secondary school, rule number one was a breach of common sense. It's a breach of school.
Sorry?
When they went to secondary school, the first school was a breach of common sense. It's a breach of school. Essentially, I'm asking, so if there are rules, and the rules are being broken, what then?
The rules, they change about the health policy.
They have been asking. This is a different question. If rules are being broken, then what?
Sir? I understand. Sir, you see I'm old school just like you. So sir,
I'm not old school.
So when I'm old school, what I'm trying to say is that we grew up in a different generation. And if the rules, they are rules, that I am asking.
If the rules are broken,
okay, the rules.
So we should have a society.
No. If the rules are prejudiced, unlawful, and unconstitutional, then they should be removed. They should be removed.
I asked if the rules are broken. What then? We know that the Constitution. Let's say the Constitution. The rules are broken.
Okay, we have some time. Fast approaching 9 o'clock.
As I would say again, if the rules are unethical, if the rules are unconstitutional, if the rules are prejudiced, then it is unjust. You don't follow unjust rules.
Tyra, I know you had some contribution to make. So you get a question as well.
Yes, good evening, and this is just to name a few, yeah? So during our tenure, we did have under the NCF, we had the NCF's Development and Training Program, which was a national program. And the goals were to develop training, address some aspects of culture, deepen cultural awareness and national identity in our heritage, engage marginalized youth in cultural activity. There were cultural officers, there were strategic alliances forced with the Youth Development Program and the Youth Commissioners in the Division of Youth Affairs for greater reach and effectiveness of programs. We also had the National Restoration Program under the National Sports Policy. We had the Inter-Parish Road Tennis Competition. We had the World Road Tennis Tour.
Including arts and culture, whereby we can identify talent at its infancy, we can nurture it, we can develop it, as opposed to waiting until athletes, artists, reach international and regional acclaim in jump and bandwagon. That's all I'm asking. I'm not against you guys, I'm with you guys.
From what I recall, you made an assertion that there was no government ever created. Well, I just named a few.
Overarching national programs.
I just named a few.
Overarching national programs.
I named a few. If you would like a copy of the 135-page document, I would be grateful to give it to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Now, I know we have a quick timeline to tie up everything tonight. We've been here a little while now. And we have a presentation from our General Secretary and President to make. Thank you everyone who came and gave contributions which will be vital in moving forward. We will ask that President Dr. Ron Yearwood and General Secretary Mr. Steve Blackett come forward to make the presentation to Mr. Randolph Lord for assistance in the community as a certificate of recognition. Thank you so much.
I need to go back.
Now, this is our first time out with people's house, and we have a full house inside the room, a full house outside the room. And we have engaged quite a bit, covering a plethora of issues. And this is one of the first of many. The rank and file was among us, coming out strong. And we've had a number of representations and presentations by each of the shadow cabinet. So we thank the shadow cabinet for being here tonight. And we will, we thank Mr. President, the General Secretary, St. James Nor, and those who are serving refreshments. We have refreshments for those who are here live. And we will ask that the head table can proceed to refreshments. Are you tired now? Refreshments itself. But really, truly, we ask anybody to just orderly enjoy the refreshments that are here. Have a conversation with those who are here from the shadow cabinet, for those who may not have gotten the full collection of the questions and presentations that they had. And we can engage further offline. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here, those online and those here live. And we look forward to another People's House by the Democratic Labour